No, you see no. You see one or two YouTube videos where that happens, and then like all of a sudden now that's like the norm. Like, get out of here.
It's not one or two. Have you even played video games before? Wait, who are you? Are you like wait, hold on. If you don't play games, why would you comment on it? What?
No, I do play games.
You don't play games. If you think that it's just one or two, if you think it's just one or two YouTube videos where women get shit for opening mics, then you just don't play games. People on the left seem to want to blame men for things in society, and then people on the right will sometimes blame women for things in society. But I see these problems as like feeding into one another. This argument that like women in society suck, they're all fat, they're all on OnlyFans, it's horrible or whatever. But then why does it work that way? Like, men are also fat and they buy pictures from women on OnlyFans, right? They enable and empower the behavior. I don't see this huge stock of like good tradcon men that are living their best lives and they're like living their best values and they just can't find women. So it always seems like there's a whole bunch of problems in society, but we all like blame the other person instead of ever like doing anything to like fix anything, I guess.
So, do you believe in systemic racism toward African Americans?
Yeah, to some extent, sure.
So would you ask a black man, do you bring enough to the table to overcome that?
In like your ideal situation, because I think like inevitably in two-parent households there's going to be some discussion of like, okay, so are we going to sacrifice career prospects for more time with the family, or are we going to, you know, prioritize gaining resources for the family? What would be like the ideal situation, like a 50-50 split between both partners, or maybe like just kind of based on their conversations with each other, you know, I'll take on this burden, you take on this burden, or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's just based on the couple's instance, right? You evaluate if maybe the woman is in a position where she's earning more, then the dad is the one that just stays at home. And we have like strong supports for that situation, so that maybe in the situations where the mom isn't earning enough to support the three people, then that's when like the social supports kick in.
Yeah, I agree with NPR Beardson up here. Yeah.
Have you guys seen that movie with? I promise this is relevant. Who was it? It was like Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro, called The Intern. Do you guys remember that? You guys seen that?
I've never seen it.
No, never seen it.
That actually sucks. That's like a really good movie. Basically, there's girl boss who owns this like millennial company, and her husband cheats on her because she like doesn't be at home very often. And this is like one of these questions that I kind of have about the dynamic. I can't imagine like a lot of men being very satisfied. Maybe this is like my own personal bias, but I can't imagine a lot of men being very satisfied being stay-at-home dads. I know of some, like I have very close friends that had stay-at-home dads, but I can't imagine that at least the satisfaction being as equivalent to that we perceive in women. Or maybe women just aren't satisfied with that either. They have just put up with it. But I'm more inclined
I can't imagine a man would also cite an Anne Hathaway rom-com movie in a debate either.
It's not a rom-com. It's not a rom-com. There's no romance in it. It's literally just a comedy. And it's Robert De Niro, actually. So that should...
It'd be really weird for Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway to hook up in the film.
Would it?
Yeah,
I think she's like 20 and he's like 70, so it'd be a little weird.
Maybe Stardust is taking us down an alternate, branch. You know, this is an interesting thing. Beardson, what's your take on like the Steve Franson take of that it's wrong for men to date women who are considerably younger? Because I disagree with that, because I think men should be a little bit older than women, first because the fertility decline is not as stark, and second so that the men accrue a stable enough income to provide for the younger and still fertile woman.
I mean, as a 33-year-old man, I'm obviously a little biased. I definitely don't want to date a woman my age, but yeah, I disagree with it.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's kind of pointless to engage with, because it is really like on an individual level, right? If you have two people that have some kind of age gap, like if it's a really dramatic age gap, then you just want some kind of conversation, communication to exist between the two of them, that like, hey, like, more or less, not in these exact words, but like, hey, like I've been alive longer than you, like I know more than you, these things, as long as that is like aware between the two of them, they have a good like relationship, you can't have a good healthy relationship in that regard. So like,
oh no, I'm telling everyone I'm 24.
That's kind of
do it as long as you can get away with
She
it.
won't find out until we're married.
wait.
You know?
If you're dishonest to somebody that you're trying to just like fuck, that's not very Christian.
Oh no, I'm not trying to just fuck them. I said I'll let them know on my married day.
This is what transgender people do, Beardson.
Oh yeah,
that is very dishonest. You cannot lie about your age or your genitalia.
Are they going to age clock me? Is that what's going to happen? You think?
I don't think they do that in general. I think there's just a discussion around it, right?
What, Beardson? Or transgender people?
A discussion, but I think some people probably believe that. I don't know.
Wait, what are I've lost. Which one are we talking about?
Probably
Are we
believe
talking
what?
about lying about age or like lying
I think
about...
lying about genitals.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I read an article about that literally happening like last week. It was like a football player for some university ended up like killing this trans person because...
Okay, wait, just real quick, because everybody's citing this fucking story and everybody's using it for like, there are no trans people involved. There's a catfish guy who's like 40 years old who just tries to get like young men off of Twitter to like meet him like in a dark place and then he blows them. He's not trans at all though.
What the fuck?
It's
He's not trans. Yeah, that's just a creepy old guy.
It's just a catfish, yeah.
What does this guy? Does this guy like show up? It's like, hey, look, you got your dick in your hand. Like, I'm here. I guess I can help you out. Like, what is that situation?
Was the catfisher like?
Hey, you got stood up too. That sucks. What if we just like had sex with each other? Wouldn't that be crazy? It's like, how does it work?
Yeah.
Jeez.
You want to talk about shooting your shot? I don't know.
All right. Let's just go to the next question.
No, about like, I'm actually interested. I don't know how much you guys dived into this, but like, do you believe? How do I phrase this? No, I'll say something that I'm interested about given the topic. I think it's fascinating, like the reasons that men and women divorce each other, and I think it speaks to like the realities where men and women differ. I think, you know, some of it's like evolutionary psych stuff, so it's all very you have to just like consider it. There's not any empirics about it really. But I think that one of the big things is that women seek stability more than men, and that's like really observable in sexual selection. But I think also carries into a marriage. And I think if a male is just providing like some value as a stay-at-home dad, I don't know if the woman is as dependent or on the man or maybe even as faithful. I'd be very interested in that, especially given some of the culture around like, you know, at work, like husbands. Like, that's my work husband. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like this terminology, but that's always kind of sussed me out. And I think that, you know, women getting into the workforce, I was discussing this with these guys I'm staying with in Texas right now. That's why I don't have my regular setup. But I think that women may have started like getting more into the workforce. Of course, there's a lot of influences into why that happened, but one of the reasons might be that they stopped viewing men as providing as much stability as they used to. And I want your thoughts. I want thoughts and provoking answers.
I think that as women are, so I think there are traditionally male roles that we get from society and traditionally female roles that we get from society. And I think that when you look at these roles descriptively, I think usually, or not descriptively, when you like, if you kind of like divorce them from our understanding of general, when you look at like the roles, the male ones are really fucking cool. And everybody thinks that. Men and women think that. And the female ones are sometimes okay, and sometimes they suck. So if you think about like, if you get like men and women,
so just like women, yeah.
Yeah. So if you get like men and women in a room together and you ask them like, well, what are like male traits? Like, what do we think of like tradition? And you're like, you know, you think like somebody that's strong, somebody that can be a provider for their family or friends, somebody that could be like an emotional bedrock for you, somebody that has like honor and integrity, they can handle their stuff, you know, they can be confrontational if they need to, they could do like warriors, fighters, like all of these things are like women or men would look at these traits like, that's really cool. That sounds like cool shit. And then when you think of like, well, what are the traits for women? It's like, well, they can be emotionally intelligent. They can take care of kids. Elegant, cool dresses. Like it's kind of like
cool?
So like yeah, you see men are cooler than women. Yeah, I mean we all know that. I mean,
so
is that your point?
Traits,
yeah.
So the traits for women kind of suck. So when we're in a more like liberal society and people can choose what they want to do, women now with access to more traditionally masculine things are like, hold on, like, even though there are problems with these, a lot of the choices that men are allowed to make are fucking awesome. Why the fuck would I choose to like lock myself in a dungeon and just take care of kids for my entire life when you guys are like out in the world making things for yourself, having a name, like doing things, having accomplishments and achievements? And I think that's kind of what we have to reckon with in liberal society, where people are able to make more choices. That traditionally women made the choice to be like family, like caregivers and everything, because they didn't really have a choice. And now given the opportunity to, why the fuck would anybody elect to do that is the issue, I think.
Well, then I think we get into the discussion of sexual differences, right? Like, why did men and women diverge so much? Why are there so few matriarchal societies? And that speaks to, like, the roles that men and women are better equipped for. And it is only when you grossly change the environment in a way that mismatches with, you know, men and women. Like, sure, women can get into the military, but most of them are going to fail some of the entrance exams, at least especially the physical portion. So when we start kind of divorcing from the reality of sexual differences, sure, you can let people do stuff, but they still seem unequipped to do them. And we basically just arrive at these schisms that we had before. And you see this like in college.
Yeah, so you don't want to be divorced from the reality, but you don't want to be tethered to it or like chained to it, right? When we look at these like differences between the genders and things like this, which wholly exist, we look at it in a way that it can tell us a lot about the person or their potentiality, but we don't try to like really let it be deterministic about that individual. So there could be like everything that you're noticing basically up to like basically the developed society or like post-industrial revolution, like when everywhere started getting away from being like an agricultural nation and labor started to be more sophisticated and like skilled and like talented, the capacity, which was the main limitation, right? Like when we look at societies where they're still like largely agricultural, we see that there's like a larger labor force participation of women, right? Like lower. What I meant to say, lower. A lot of what we see is built out of the needs of the society at the time, not something that's coded specifically in women individually or like as a gender or like a whatever.
Well, there's also like, I guess, some of the like societal values as well that might be influencing those decisions, because I think generally now it's kind of looked down upon to aspire to be a woman that wants to like have kids and raise them as like as you're like, that's how I want to find fulfillment in my life. It's sort of like looked down upon in modern society, or at least by some like pretty prominent voices in like broader culture.
What if we flip it and it's like men are just a lot better at making the things that they're more apt to do seem a lot cooler? Like saying that, well, women get tethered to these things that maybe aren't as cool seeming, I think may just demonstrate that they are not happy about it because they feel tethered to it, rather than trying to say like, this is a really cool thing. I mean, men have been going to war and dying. I wouldn't necessarily say that actually dying, depending on how it happens, is kind of a cool thing, but I don't know if women share like that same drive. And so maybe it's just that women are not as good at romanticizing their role because they've constantly been in this idea. And I think this is the same thing with liberalism generally. They're constantly in a state of rebelling from what they see as like the nature they're tethered to, instead of kind of welcoming it in, saying this is actually kind of the coolest thing ever. Like we have tons of women now that work 9 to 5s instead of raising families, and I think if it came down to it and they were able to experience both, I think they might prefer the families. And I think any mother, like I've talked to my mom about this, it's not an easy thing to be a mom whatsoever. And the problem is that now you're seeing this flip back with like trad thoughts where they're all like, yeah, I want to be a mom. I want to be a stay-at-home mom because I want to like bake cookies and do nothing else. So maybe just women are not as good at romanticizing the reality or the nature they're born into.
Well, I mean, really the problem ultimately is just that women aren't as just good at things than men for the most part. I mean, you know, that's the thing. It's like women try to interfere men's spaces all the time, and they try to compete, and they oftentimes fail. I mean, like look at like gaming, for instance. It's like there's a reason why like women have their like own leagues, right? Like, and yeah, you'll occasionally see 1 or 2 women on like an Overwatch team, and then they never really win, right? Like, what's the limitation there? Like, why aren't women good at video games, for instance?
Probably because women don't play video games growing up. Generally, it's all of it is geared towards men most of the time.
I mean, but who was stopping women from playing video games?
It's not about. It's not so naive that there's like a guy standing in front of like Toys R Us, where when a girl walks up with a Game Boy, he's like trying to slam dunk her. It doesn't present that way. It's the idea that like growing up, like games are heavily advertised towards boys. A lot of parents discourage girls from playing games. Like girls might be more likely to get shit for it than boys do. That's just not what they like see societally, like in culture, like in movies and TV shows. Like it's just like those types of little pressures are moving people in different directions.
Right.
But surely you would see some anomaly though, and you don't. That's the problem. Though. Like you see no anomaly. Like it is generally across the board, women are terrible at video games.
Yeah, but an anomaly,
physical sport.
And it's hard to see an anomaly because like generally like to do something like really amazing like that requires like infrastructure to do it, right? Like the best basketball player in the world probably had good coaches, probably had good teams to play on. Like these people don't just pop up out of nowhere. And the same thing with gaming. Like very rarely is it just one person like locked in a room that schizoids himself to being a pro. Like he's usually got friends that he plays with, a community that he's involved with, like coaches or teams that he's on. Like it requires like more than just one anomaly to do it.
Yeah, a great example is the hockey. Wait, what's like a really great example?
I want to push back on it. Like you can push back with your example or like add evidence to it, but like you hear about like Fortnite kids. Like there's these like professional Fortnite kids who literally just like joined a tournament because they played it a lot in like their parents' basement or something like that. And I know you're saying, yeah, but what if women were pushed away from that and they didn't do it when they were kids? Yeah, but there's also kind of a reason. It gets down to the playground. Like, what toys do they choose? If video games were really well picked up by women, I guess you could put that back to like, well, it's not like a womanly thing to do. Yeah,
it also goes back to like Destiny's thing that he was saying before, that the advertising for Fortnite and all of like the merchandise for Fortnite, all the Fortnite shirts that kids are wearing for school are generally in the boys' clothing section.
Yeah, but like, why? It's because boys like Fortnite. Why are trucks?
Right. I mean, there's definitely that too. There's definitely that too. There's definitely
it's like you're trying to operate on this understanding like somehow the advertising is like influencing the market when really the market, like the advertising is reacting to the market, right? Like that tends to be what it is. I'm sorry, advertising does not dictate who is going to buy a product necessarily. It's reacting to the market.
Advertising can absolutely.
I'd say it's a.
Hold on, wait.
I would say it's a.
There's a reason why.
Guys, one at a time.
I would say it's a self-reinforcing cycle. I think that like you find that boys play Fortnite more, so you advertise more to boys, and therefore more boys are wearing these merchandise that advertises Fortnite, and therefore more boys play Fortnite, so you advertise more to boys, and it's sort of like a self-reinforcing loop.
Yeah, but you put Fortnite merch in the girls section, no one's gonna buy it. Like that's ultimately what's gonna happen. I mean, you can do that. You can advertise all you want. I mean, hell, we've passed for the past 10 years trying to get women to play games. There was an entire movement around trying to get women to play games, and guess what? They don't want to. They don't like it.
No, it's not just because they don't want to. It's because there's a whole bunch of stigma associated with girls that get played, and when they enter these, seriously, that just it really is. You
get out of here. Yourself. What's hey there, gamer? Like, what do you think this is? Fucking Law and Order? SVU or something? Like, really? Get out of here.
No, the stigma is literally every single time you join a voice lobby and you open your fucking microphone, people make it sound like you're not supposed to be there. You don't have that experience as a man. It never happens. It's never happened in your entire life. Like, it's a fundamental.
No, you see, no. You see one or two YouTube videos where that happens, and then like all of a sudden now that's like the norm. Like, get out of here.
It's not one or two. Have you even played video games before? Wait, who are you? Are you like wait, hold on. If you don't play games, why would you comment on it? What?
No, I do play games.
You don't play games. If you think that it's just one or two, if you think it's just one or two YouTube videos where women get shit for opening mics, then you just don't play games. You're either lying about your background or you play RuneScape all day. It is absolutely the case that if you've played any voice over IP game, whether it's Dota, CSGO, Overwatch, or whatever, as soon as a fucking woman opens her mic, why aren't you making a sandwich? It's had a 12-year-old boy every fucking time, dude. I've played with women on stream and done this for weeks, where every single time they fucking say anything, there's a million guys like you that are making stupid fucking comments about her voice. Like,
okay, but here's the thing though too. It's like dude, it happens to men too. But the only reason
doesn't happen to the men.
Oh, I know. Yeah, there's no shit talking between men. Guys, shut the fuck up! Holy shit! Shut the fuck up! Nobody wants to hear from you. Shut up! Holy shit, dude! Stop fucking talking over everybody. Holy shit! I'm gonna make noises and be obnoxious. Shut up! We're having a conversation. You're being a fucking baby. Shut the fuck up. You fucking weird pedo ass looking motherfucker. Anyways. No, but the thing is like men get just as much shit as women do. Like they act as if like nobody's talking shit. Like that's just what video game lobbies are. People talking shit at one another. I'm sorry that women aren't equipped to handle it, and they're the ones that make a fucking federal case about it. But like let's be honest and real here. The only reason men aren't saying like, "Hey, why don't you go back to work?" is because it's mostly men playing it.
Yeah. So the difference between, I didn't just say that men get a lot of shit and women get a lot of, and women can't handle shit. The difference is that women get a different type of shit. If you're a man playing a game, you will never hear somebody tell you shouldn't be here because you're a man, or they're making jokes about you being a man. Like they might
they'll say you shouldn't be here because you're bad. That's what they say.
Exactly. That's the difference, right? When like a guy is bad at video games, it's because he sucks at games. When a girl is bad at video games, it's because girls suck at video games. That's the difference, right? When a girl is in a lobby, sure. When a girl is in a lobby and people are insulting her, it's because she's a woman. It's not the same thing with men. They're insulting because you suck. You're judged on the merits of your gameplay, not just the sound of your voice. That's the difference.
Okay, no, hold on. There's totally a halfway point. First of all, yeah, you kind of walked into that one. Like, it's kind of different. But where it's more applicable is with age. You know how many times I was told I was like a squeaker and that I shouldn't? Like, I need to get off the mic. I need to stop talking to people. That was an immutable characteristic at the time that didn't stop me from playing games. And so you could say, yeah, sure, women get, like, crap because they're women. But at the same time, yeah, you're telling me women really actually like playing video games and they should be allowed to and they shouldn't get, like, put off by it. But at the same time, you're saying that, well, with the stigma existing, of course women aren't going to play video games. Dude, as a gamer, as a dude, I don't care what stigma there is. I don't care if I'm, like, retarded. We have a buddy in our, viewership named Colt who's literally, like, wheelchair bound. None of that matters. It's about whether you like playing video games or not. And if women are going to say, yeah, but people are mean to me, then they just don't like playing it that much. Maybe that's the difference, is that, the problem is that you're saying the one thing, the women wanting to play the video games, is compromised by the second, and we're saying if the second is compromising the first, you probably shouldn't be gaming.
I have so much history gaming across so many games. The idea that like men are above this and will be stoic, like solo farmers on Rust, or solo gankers in Eve, or solo players in FPS games, like a couple of those people might exist, but for the most part, nobody wants to be that person. People want to have groups of friends that they play games with. They want to have Discords where they're all laughing. Even the handicap guy that you brought up, or the wheelchair bound guy you brought up, sounds like he's got a group of friends that he chats with and hangs out with. Like nobody wants to be the solo schizoid gamer. Like
he doesn't stop playing because we make fun of him.
Yeah, but he probably views it as a friendly banter thing, not as like a you genuinely don't belong here.
Okay, so that's the difference between hold on. That's the difference between men and women. Is women don't get that. They don't get the banter.
Because it's not banter when men do it. It's literally
dude, it is.
Yeah,
I mean,
the thing is, it's like
what you're
dude,
you will make fun of.
Wait, hang on. Well, you're describing with your friend in a wheelchair has a rapport. Like you have a rapport with a guy within the wheelchair, right? When you're talking to complete strangers on the internet, like, well, I mean, maybe some of the more special people on the panel tonight would walk up to somebody on the street and for absolutely completely random, no reason whatsoever besides he had the red hair, right? And insulting him or trying to like pick a fight with him. Like this is not normal behavior.
Well, no, of course, we're on the internet, though. That's a totally different thing. Yeah, not on the streets, of course. Behavior on the streets and behavior online is totally different. No, the terrible point's yours because you're the one trying to compare, like, two completely different realities here. And the idea that, like, yeah, women do get made fun of because they sound like a woman, right? And they're a woman. Yeah, people also get made fun of for sounding fat. People get made fun of for being, like, sounding like they're 12 years old. People get made fun of for sounding retarded. I mean, people get made fun of for sounding gay. That's what, it's just part of the gaming culture.
Both of you now have conceded that, like, yeah, women do get a disproportionate amount of.
No, I didn't concede that they don't get a disproportionate amount. They get an equal amount, and they're the only ones that are whining about it.
Well, I disagree with the first part. Like, I think women get more. Like, Destiny's right. Yeah. Whenever a woman is in a chat, it's like everybody's either saying, like, yo, send me nudes, what's your snap? Or, like, get out of here, make me a pancake.
Well, it also goes in a positive direction, too. Sorry.
Beardson yelled at me, and I'm taking my rage out on you, Flamenco. But yeah, women just don't take it. They just don't take the heat. And part of the culture that men have created is about taking the heat, right? And that's what brings me to the earlier point, which is men romanticize their reality better than women do. Men react to things better. So when you brought this up, you're like, men talk about these things like being honorable or virtuous or they're assertive, this and that. Yeah, these are tangible differences between masculinity and femininity. There's a reason why there's the perception of a nagging wife, and I think the problem on the right is that people think that started like in the last 10 years. Men and women are different. And if you think that, you know, you're going to get a wife who's going to like play video games with you the way that a dude will, or that you're just going to have like a best friend and a wife, I think you're misunderstanding the way women are. And if you hate women for the way that they are, you're not going to get along with them either. But you're basically saying that we shouldn't tether them to these values or to these identities that that we have had for such a long time. By saying that, you're kind of ignoring the reality that the cultures spawned by the differences between men and women are significant and are maybe even useful, maybe even dictate pretty clearly what works and what doesn't for either of those groups.
I think it's a good point for us to move on to the next topic. Otherwise, we're going to start looping.
What?
So
that was like a whole.
Well, I mean, we looped a little
down.
bit. We kind of did a half a loop, right? Unless anybody else wants to contribute anything.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that, like, when it comes to when it comes to like women in social video game circles, I will say it can also have like a weird and like slightly positive. I don't even know if I want to call it positive direction, but there's also like that tried and true axiom of World of Warcraft or any sort of MMO guild that goes to shit because a girl enters in and people like really get like romantic feelings or some shit, like in a really fucking weird way.
Yeah, that's true, but like there's like it sucks if you're a girl though and you don't want to play like, because if you're a girl you're gonna get shit no matter what, so you can either like you know, have an army of simps and like farm that shit, or you just don't and then people will assume you will anyway, and it's like you're fucked no matter what. And some girls, like there are a lot of girls that play games like that that never even fucking get on the mic because it's like it's not even worth it.
Good.
And then there's plenty of women who like get on the mic and then they make their whole identity the fact that, you know, people give them these reactions. And honestly, I don't know how bad that is, especially regarding like the simping thing. I think that's a really damning thing. But it goes to say that, like, you know, the relationships, the circles, the friendships that exist between men and women are totally different. And again, I am totally against the notion that, like, yeah, you know, men have all these good quality, like cool, assertive personality traits, and women have all these ones that we don't think is very cool. Maybe it's because women spent a lot of time thinking, you know, I want all the things that men have, instead of saying like, yeah, well, you can't get pregnant, you dummy, you stupid moron. Like, you can't, you're not emotionally intelligent enough to not just like fight people. I don't know. I think women need to romanticize their situation the way that men have. And understand the differences.
I'm kind of curious. When you talk about these personality... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, but do you guys really want to continue on this topic? Because I feel like we're going to loop around again.
I want to hear what Bryce says.
I'm curious what he says.
I like Bryce.
Okay.
Bryce is cool.
I don't want to hear it, Bright. No, go ahead.
I don't. I
do want to hear it. I do want to hear it. I do want to hear it. Go.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bryce.
I actually think I might have lost the train of thought.
God damn it, Stardust! You fucked it up. Not me.
Hey, don't blame me. Don't blame me. Blame Kai, because I was trying to move on. And
wait. No, I remembered.
Oh, you remember.
Okay.
I remember. Okay. So when we're talking about these personality traits, you're talking about like a male personality trait, female personality, masculine, feminine, etc. How do those develop? Like, where do you think like
I
those
think a major
come
part
from?
of it is biological differences, right? So that's why I brought up like how societies form at the beginning. I think that there are sexual differences and psychological differences, and they manifest in different like personality traits. So like male assertiveness likely was bred out of like being able to be physically dominant.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about like a lot of the stuff like aggression, the like assertiveness, a lot of these things, we can link it to like the hormones like testosterone and things like that. This is the area that we can see a lot of the sex differences. But when we're talking about like personality traits and a lot of the things that we've been talking about so far tonight, these are a lot of things that are socialized into like a particular group of people, like men and women. It can happen for other groups that can be like Venn diagrams where you have like overlap with each other. So people can have like group membership with like multiple groups. And each one can have its own thing like baked into it, right? And I think it's important to remember that which is kind of like what I was saying to Beardson earlier, the amount of stuff that's actually deterministic about these individuals based off of their like biology and the ways that we're talking about are pretty limited. Like we know that a lot of these traits that we've talked about, they're largely results of culture. So we can coach men to be a particular way and we can coach women to be particular ways, right? We have a ton of like a lot of what we've said so far too is like women experience a ton of pushback when they behave in particular ways. Like when we look at Elizabeth Holmes, right, the blonde executive lady for that blood company, Theranos. She wore like a dress suit and like lowered her voice just to have the like a different perception of her as like a defendant in the case. Like, and the people are weirded out by it. Like whoa, like why are you trying to act like more masculine? And like the reaction to it was like I think relevant.
Yeah, I understand that. These things are like, they overlap so much that it's difficult to draw up like where one takes over the other. But like you could say that, well, she kind of was able to socialize herself differently or change her outward appearance so that people thought she was more assertive or more masculine. But I think it also comes down to like just how women are, right? Like you give men the opportunity to be like, but
don't you think that how women are can be like a result of their circumstances, which could be a result of other things like
circumstances, their sex. I think it's a nature of their birth, and then you're basically arguing. I guess we could take this back to like the first.
Hey, no, you know what? You said something I can kind of agree with, right? I could,
okay.
If we're talking about like the circumstance of their birth being the cause, like I think that that's absolutely like the root cause. But at the same time, this is like the cause of what then happens through the mechanisms of like culture and like the institutions.
Here, Kai, I got a gym analogy for you. Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, so
hey, how do I get my flare in your server? By the way,
yeah, I
messaged the lifting channel. I want the 1K or the 1 pound club.
Here's what it feels like to me. Okay, I think that there are differences between men and women, and because those differences exist, what happens is we hyper exaggerate them in society. So maybe we'll have like some trait where like men are like 58. And women are like 42% on that trait. But because there is a real difference, what happens is we exaggerate the fuck out of it, societally speaking, and then it'll look like at the end of the day, like men are like 90 and women are 10. And it's like, and then people will look at that and they'll go like, oh, well, why is it so different? Well, because of biological differences. So it's kind of true, but not really. And the example that I'll go to here, I don't know what kind of women you like, but I think that the average state of like muscular development in women is abysmal. Like, I don't know if you've met like a woman that can't put a bag up in a plane. Like
I'm liking this.
Yeah, sure, they can't do it. And it's like, you'll look at the difference between strength of like men and women, and there is a real biological difference there, given the same time training, given no training, whatever. Obviously there's a difference. But people exaggerate that so much that the average woman thinks she can't put her Gucci bag up in a plane, right? She can't carry a bag to an airport. But that's not true. The average woman with barely any training could like get to some level of being able to do it. So I guess all I'm saying is that like, I acknowledge that there are differences, but when we see differences that are hyper ultra exaggerated, I don't think it's true to just say, well, that's only because of biology. I think we take small biological differences and then we hyper exaggerate them in society, and then people think that that's what's naturally happening, in my opinion.
I agree to some extent. I'm a big advocate of women actually exercising. There's a lot of benefits. And when we read like the Bible, we hear about women, I think it's either in Psalms or Proverbs, the Proverbs 31 woman who's supposed to be like good with her hands, who does things around the house, like exercises in some fashion, or at least is handy. So in that sense, like I wouldn't disagree with you, but I also wouldn't say that it's like a 48-52 split. I think the extreme differences you talk about really are not so apparent. I think the differences aren't extreme. They're a conclusion of either men or women being more able to do one thing versus the other. And I think if it was like a 40-60 split, the split wouldn't be as extreme, because we would find so many women that are just as good as men at doing this. But that's never the ratio we see. We see women who, fail physical exams or are very physically different in the military or in sports. We see women who are like kids on the playground who choose different things, not because they've been socialized into it. And then when you swing it the other way and you think it's this 40-60 thing, you'll get a kid who likes playing dress up, and then you'll start to say, well, maybe that kid is transgender. And the response to it shouldn't be that the kid is transgender, because we know that, where transgenderism is supposedly genetically onset, it's a very minor portion of the population. But the more and more you start to think that these extreme differences are much closer to the middle, the more and more you put people outside the realm of comfort that they were evolutionarily designed to fit. And we have those extreme separations because most people fit into that category, not because there's like a 30% margin that could go either way.
Kai, I just think it's kind of fucked up that you tried to justify your muscle girl fetish with the Bible. Okay, I think that's fucking weird.
So I think this is a good time now. We're actually moving topics because chat wants to move
Destiny,
topics.
What'd you think of my thought-provoking response?
I agree to some extent.
No, we're moving topics.
Kai be like, oh, Daddy, Destiny, what did you think? Did I do good? Did I do good? Destiny, please, can I have your affection now?
All right,
Whether you like it or not, Destiny's one of the smartest debaters on the
He's your enemy here. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is a fucking debate.
It's time to move to the next topic. I'm fucking done with you guys.
Kai be like, hey, enemy.
It's time to move to the next topic. Next topic. The U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other country in the world, but struggles to meet basic standards for patient outcomes. The U.S. spends more on its military than any other country. God damn it! Why is Kai? Okay, all right. Did he really leave because of that? All right.
Yeah, if you meet me again, I'm gonna leave too. Yeah, I was being funny and I was making a funny bit, and you ruined it. So yeah, if you meet me again, I'm gonna leave.
Okay, I don't care if you leave.
Okay, bye.
See you later.
Oh shit.
Okay.
Oh, wow, I did. I think he's gonna be back in the lobby.
Probably.
Yeah,
is that like just like a dramatic bit, or are they really that like?
No, I think they're actually. I think they actually left.
Is relatively. Beardson does have go off moments though.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. I had to assert my dominance, but anyways, right. Let me go back to the topic list. I'll get somebody else in here as well.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
That was entertaining. That was not. I honestly had no expectations that they would just rage quit. I figured that it would be a bit and they'd be back by now, but.
Right. Okay. So back to the question. The U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other country in the world, but struggles to meet basic standards for patient outcomes. The U.S. spends more on its military than any other country, but yet has the best military in the world. Does this mean that government-run socialized programs are more effective at delivering on their goals than leaving it to the free market?
So I think on both of these, it's sort of a misnomer with a couple of things. I think a broad majority of U.S. health costs are generally due to the fact that we engage mostly in like triage, not triage. Like we generally address health problems as they pop up, as opposed to like pre-screenings that would actually cause this to happen. So I think it's like a combination of like people maybe thinking that health costs are too prohibitive, so they don't do like regular checkups, as well as some health problems such as obesity that like lead to higher costs. We spend like a lot on military as well, but there's like some really worrying trends, especially in our Navy, with ships that are in desperate need of repair and retrofitting. That I think there's like some ships that are due for repair and dry dock maintenance that are like 10 years out from when they were supposed to get it in the first place. So it's kind of a mixed bag with that one. But I don't know necessarily know if throwing the more money at the problem is the most effective way of dealing with that.
A few things. I find myself agreeing with you, and I think that it's important to talk about the fact that I should have lost my thought again. I agree with you. The fact that like the preventative shit, right? Like America excels rather when it comes to like treatment. And when you talk to a lot of people that are not from the U.S., they will travel to the U.S. for treatment, for things specifically. And the U.S. really shits the bed on preventative stuff and like educating people, informing them, and being really involved in their life to help them like be best capable to make the decisions that will affect their health in the best way possible. So I think if you want to change something, I agree with you. You have to change the way that you're spending, because we also don't know I don't think the American military is actually that effective or officially efficient when it comes to the budget. I think when it comes to the budget, the American military is actually the opposite of efficient. So I think we probably just have to change the way that I'm Canadian. I'm not a dumbass American. You have to change the way you guys spend your money.
I mean, whether or not a program is good for being socialized or not, I think it just depends on what the good or service is. I think markets can provide for some goods or services really well, and others it sucks at providing for. It really depends on what we're talking about.
Hey guys, sorry for leaving. I have to leave to record an episode. I just didn't know when Stardust was going to unmute me. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Oh, well, rip.
Thank you for joining Big Tech and last username. I sent you guys the question as well.
We're on the second one.
Yeah, number 2.
Number 2.
Don't everyone talk all at once.
Yeah.
What was number 2? I just got here. Catch me up.
I just linked it to you. So the U.S. spends more on healthcare than any other country in the world, but struggles to meet basic standards for patient outcomes. The U.S. spends more on its military than any other country, but yet has the best military in the world. Does this mean that government-run socialized programs are more effective at delivering on their goals than leaving it to the free market?
When you say doesn't meet basic standards for patient outcomes, what do you mean by that? How are we measuring that?
I
mean, they're just not doing as well as other countries.
Wait, the U.S. spends more on healthcare. Do you mean in socialized programs or the individuals in the U.S.?
I guess just like an individual.
As a percentage of GDP, what we spend on healthcare, I think, is greater than any other country.
Yeah.
What we in the private sector or what we in the government?
Just
altogether.
It's all together, the overall spending.
Okay. The overall cost of healthcare.
Yeah. So I think that includes private and public expenditures on healthcare.
I mean, last I heard, the U.S., like half of healthcare spending in the U.S. is government spending, right? So it's not like it's a private system. It's kind of like a mix.
That wouldn't be surprising,
Yeah,
considering the majority of spending is on older people, so things like Medicare are probably picking up a lot of those costs, right?
Yep. I'm going to try to find this study. I'm kind of on short notice, but I've heard that there's not a really good correlation with spending and outcomes like on an individual level, right? Like done studies where they give people more money to spend on healthcare and they don't actually end up any healthier, strangely enough. So the excessive spending is not, I mean, don't assume that the extra spending is failing to make people healthier because the healthcare is worse. It could just be that when people spend a lot on healthcare, they're not doing it to actually be healthier. They could do it for other reasons. I mean, it's different theories about this, but I've heard the theory that basically people spend lots of money on healthcare to sort of to make themselves feel better, to make other people feel better, to be generous to other people. So it's more complicated than just saying, well, the outcomes are they spend more and the outcomes are worse. So government, socialized healthcare is better. There's a lot going on.
I'm not an expert on the cost of healthcare on a level like we're trying to address, but I can tell an anecdotal story from my personal. I think it's
real quick. Your mic sensitivity on
cutting
Discord
in and out.
Yeah,
might be
you're
low.
cutting out. Yep.
no way.
It sounds like the sensitivity on Discord is low, so you're not speaking loud enough for it to pick it up. Is what it sounds like.
Okay, I put it on auto. How's that? Better.
Much better.
Better.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. All right. Personal anecdote. Look, I'm not a professional on the cost of healthcare in relation to GDP or anything like that. I did spend 5 years working on an ambulance, and I saw some things there I'll tell you about real quick. One of them was that the people that had insurance, they were very choosy about whether or not they even wanted to ride to the hospital, because there was questions about whether or not the billing was going to cover it, this and that, and they would choose which hospital they're going to go to because, this is the one where my doctor is, and this, that, and the other. A lot of consideration was going on. There was a lot of increased mindfulness for those who had a private medical coverage that they were using. There's another program in California called Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal is handed out like snacks to everybody who's poor. And Medi-Cal was, and particularly in the neighborhood. I was working in Compton for my first 2 years because I was new and I had to just work in the worst neighborhood that they couldn't staff. So I just took the worst one. You'd think that Compton's mostly blacks because of the rap music, but it's like actually majority Mexican at this point. The Mexicans have moved in and taken over the traditionally black areas of the hood or whatever in LA. The Mexican immigrants, they all have Medi-Cal, and they rode the ambulance more than anybody else. And the ambulance is a private ambulance company. It's like $1,000 to go to the hospital in the ambulance. And they were riding. We had special codes that we would write on the paperwork to describe what type of ride this was for what type of essentially like Hispanic hysteria that we were experiencing on the daily basis. It's just an anecdotal, I know, but Hispanic panic was we would designate it HP so that when we handed the paperwork off to the doctor, they would understand, oh, we're just dealing with a Mexican woman who's having a hysterical episode in order to like emotionally manipulate her family to making them think that they caused her to fall into a fit, and now they're all worried she's going to die, and she's riding to the hospital in the ambulance, and Medi-Cal is going to pay for it. And it was every day, sometimes multiple times a day. That's just one example, but all the time, these people, they would go to the county hospital, the city hospital, whatever. They didn't care. They'll ride it because they know the state's going to pay for it. They're not going to come out of pocket at all. And if anything goes wrong, they'll just go back across the border, which is where they're sending most of their money anyway, back to their families. That's the real deal in California. So I don't know about the rest of the states, but when the state is paying for the healthcare, maybe just to piggyback on what we just heard, is that when you give more access to healthcare, it doesn't necessarily make people healthier, but it does increase the costs a lot.
I think most people are going to agree that giving healthcare and giving like baseline services to people of your country is a good thing, and trying to get dragged down by worries or fears about insurance fraud or other forms of fraud or exploitation of that social institution is kind of like an old like scare tactic talking point. Obviously, like we know that there are some like public institutions that can be really inefficient, but none of these things are going to be an adequate response to why you can't like either increase funding but also like change funding, right? Because when you look at other countries aside from the US, everybody can do healthcare and they are healthier.
Yeah, so what I would say that what it means to me is that increased access to a benefit or to a privilege like healthcare, it needs to coincide with an increased ability for self-responsibility and self-control. And when those things don't go together hand in hand, and when you have high impulse, low self-control, low responsibility individuals giving access to a position of high privilege or high, something like access to state-funded healthcare, then you're in a situation where the thing ends up becoming squandered. So a civilization with low impulse or low responsibility individuals can't have nice things at the end of the day. So in this argument, I always concede. I'll give you universal health care. I'll give you even tuition reimbursement. I'll give you all the things that you want on the left if first you give me basically like a Christianized society and reestablish control truth in our media, restore trust with the banks, return schools to the way they should be. Like, give me all of these other things that create the individuals to be the way that they should be, and then we can have nice things. But not the other way around. We can't just have a scumbag society and then have nice things for everybody.
Wouldn't you say that when you're talking about like a Christianized society, you're talking about an idealized society that could be achieved through the provisions of these social institutions that help people? Right. Like, what if because people are like, we agreed earlier that women, for example, are products of their circumstances, right? What if a lot of these people that get into like less than ideal lives?
Do that.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I'm just flabbergasted.
What did you laugh at?
Okay.
What's the laugh? Why did Christianity make you bust out in laughing?
Well, because you're specifically saying like, I will agree to these like civic things as long as you agree to like my rigid religious society, right? Like we've had separation of church and state in majority of Western countries for how long, 100, 200 years now. It's like I don't know. It just seems kind of LARPy.
That mean well, all right. Well, the idea is, well, first of all, I mean, the argument could be made like, well, look where it's got us. But secondly, it's the idea is that the state isn't going to come and, impose itself on you with regard to religion. But the thing is that was within a Christian society. That was.
Yeah, but who decides, right? Like this falls back to the problem of like, who is the one that decides what Christianity, like Orthodox, fundamentalist types, like a Baptist, like evangelical, it's like Protestant versus Catholicism, like which Christianity, right? Like, and who decides like which body? Because even within those religions themselves, or like within the denominations themselves, there's like fractures, there's splinters. So like,
yeah, I agree that all needs to get fixed up too. That's like a massive problem that needs to get.
Yeah. So I think the problem that I'm having is that you are laying at the feet of anybody that wants to work with you the idea that like, okay, I'm only going to support this change, which I think is like, okay, this is good. Like I kind of agree with this. There's nothing actually like really wrong with this except my obsession with like a free rider problem.
Right.
Yeah. So like, and I mean like free rider problems they're more like a warning, right? It's something that we have to be mindful of and careful of. It's not something like you can't do this because this is going to be inevitability. It's just like, this might happen. So you should probably be careful of it and watch out for it. With regards to fraud and stuff, if that wasn't clear.
Seemed like you had more to say there.
No, really, because I also feel like
the free rider thing. Okay,
yeah.
Well, anybody else? I have more to say. I could. If anybody else doesn't.
I
have no idea how you turned in this you turned a conversation about like healthcare into a Christian nation.
Yeah.
Right. Like
I don't know. Am I the only Christian here? But the relation is, yeah, we can have nice things when we have nice people, and when we descend into a whole other type of world where everybody's just living for themselves and their own self-interest and materialistic, totally atomized society, we're not going to be able to end up having these nice things. What we end up is having exorbitantly costly, low efficiency systems.
How do like countries in Europe make healthcare work when they don't have like Christian countries?
Example?
France, Germany, Sweden, or any like the UK. Like these people all have like some form of single payer or multi-payer healthcare system, no?
For now they do. I know the demographics are shifting there, but it's not the same as in California, that's for sure. I mean, I know they don't have Mexican immigrants coming into France.
Are Mexican immigrants the reason why we can't have healthcare, or is that?
I don't know. Is it?
Okay.
It's like the I guess
tens
the overall...
tens of millions of them, and they all get it. Like, how much does that cost?
I mean, in the United States right now, I'm pretty sure the majority of like welfare goes towards native-born people versus immigrant-born people, even on a per capita basis. But I mean, I don't know if like high immigrant populations are the reason why we spend so much on healthcare. Like it seems like we have a lot of other problems that make healthcare kind of incompatible with private markets rather than just a lot of immigrants. But
yeah, it's true. And but I know the American diet is different than it is in France and Sweden and other places that you mentioned.
Well, yeah, obesity is like 100% like one of the biggest contributors to the high like price. But yeah. I mean, again, it's also kind of I would say it's also probably we don't go to the doctor nearly as much as we should in America.
Yeah,
right.
Wonder why that is.
Yeah, so the demographics
costs and various other things,
the health difference. The U.S. is they call us a big old experiment, and I don't know if it's succeeding or failing, but we're in a lot of areas like this. There's a multi-factor failure, it looks like. And
what does the failure look like?
Problem. Everybody's fat and sick and broke and divided right down the middle and angry and scared.
I don't think. I mean, I can agree with the polarization. The divides are like that's something like most people here. I think everybody here would agree that there are like a lot of divides, but I don't know that I would agree that like most people, like everybody or most people, are like sick or like debilitated or like everything that you're trying to list here. Like this doesn't seem.
Well, we'll have to agree.
I mean, is there evidence that?
I mean, I can go to the beach right now.
Quality of healthcare is worse in the U.S.
Look at the people. Look at just the physique of everybody there versus the physique 40
I mean, I I feel like you're gonna get. It depends on what day, right? There's no way to use the attendance to a beach on any given day as being like a strong indication. Like unless you did it like 365 days or like multiple years, like maybe
every single day.
Yeah, I think you'd see a greater diversity because there's a whole lot more people that use social media that have an interest in going to the gym and other things like that. Like, sure, there's all kinds of like people that just look like normal and average, but yeah, there's all kinds of people that go to the gym.
I mean,
Okay,
like
so
overall,
you're saying that everybody's not fat?
Yeah, like,
No.
obesity
No,
rates in the
hang
US
on.
are like 100% of the
Yeah.
age.
Yes. Okay. Obesity rate. Yeah. Okay. What I'm responding to is your claim that like everybody, like that there's like a failure, that we've gotten to the point where this is like a huge failure. Like I think like maybe in the past you could say that the way that the governments have handled like the health communication, messaging, things like that, that could be considered a failure. But like to say society, like everything that we're like these super vague abstract things, to say that society is a failure because and like kind of like vaguely list these like random statistics, it's not really anything that kind of like adds up, or like it just doesn't seem like any of what you're saying is true. You're just kind of like squeezing in a point with a bunch of like statistics that you don't think anyone's going to challenge.
Just telling it the way it looks to me. I mean,
Yeah, like, hey, fair. Like, listen, if it's your subjective experience and everything you're just reporting to us, this is your survey of your life and your reality. That's okay. Like, because I can just say you're.
I don't have a peer-reviewed study that I can show that.
No, it doesn't even have to be peer-reviewed studies.
I'm just saying, like, there's like, what would be the statistic to show whether or not the experiment is succeeding or failing? Like, what would success look like if the American experiment was succeeding?
Well, I mean, this is a pretty broad question, right? Because you're basically trying to ask, like, what is the success?
The question you asked me, like, why is it failing? It's the same question.
Well, I think since you're claiming that there's failure, asking you to define what the failure looks like is not that big of a deal. Like, it doesn't require that I then, before you tell me like what that failure looks like very specifically and clearly, I don't have to first give you my explanation of like what success looks like, what the counter, like what the opposite of that is.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe we should go back to the healthcare stuff if you guys want to. I was just trying to add what I could in there because nobody was jumping on it.
Yeah. Up to you guys.
I was knocking on the door to try to get in when you guys were having the conversation about women in the workplace, but now I'm in late past that topic, which is kind of like, that's my topic. So
do you hate women too, like Beardson?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not like Beardson. I hate them much. I hate them more deeply and for a better reason than he does.
And I think I read in somebody's chat, like, are you both divorced?
Jesus. Wait, yes. Why do you hate women? I'm curious. It's relevant to healthcare, I promise.
It's relevant to healthcare?
Well, I'm trying to make sure Stardust doesn't change the topic.
No, it's good. You can go ahead. You can go ahead. Fine.
Because they are rebellious and disobedient when they should be supplicative and obedient. They should be decent, and they're not.
Why should they be?
And instead, so that we can get along with them.
Wouldn't it be, if we're going to go traditional there, shouldn't it be a man's role to tame a woman then?
Yeah, indeed.
So do you think that you bring enough to the table to do that? When I talk to...
Do I bring enough to the table to do that?
Yeah, so when I talk to... When I talk to women that like bend conservative...
a bit of a non sequitur.
Well, it's not a non sequitur, right? So because I mentioned this before to Kai. People on the left seem to want to blame men for things in society, and then people on the right will sometimes blame women for things in society. But I see these problems as like feeding into one another. So earlier, I think it was Beardson or whatever, made this argument that like women in society suck. They're all fat. They're all on OnlyFans. It's horrible or whatever. But then, I mean, like, well, why does it work that way? Like, men are also fat, and they buy pictures from women on OnlyFans, right? They enable and empower the behavior. I don't see this huge stock of like good tradcon men that are living their best lives and they're like living their best values and they just can't find women. So it always seems like there's a whole bunch of problems in society, but we all like blame the other person instead of ever like doing anything to like fix anything, I guess.
So do you believe in systemic racism toward African Americans?
Yeah, to some extent, sure.
So would you ask a black man, do you bring enough to the table to overcome that?
In a personal conversation, on a class conversation, it's a little bit different, of course, right?
Right. So
yeah, if they're like if they're laying their problems that they have in life at the feet of systemic racism, but they're also like, you know, constantly doing stupid shit that gets them in trouble, it's kind of, you kind of shot yourself in the foot in that one too.
But when you're looking at the state of things for the black man in general, en masse, and then you want to talk about systemic racism in relation to black politics or black economics or something like that, that's when it's relevant and valid. So when I say that women are this way, and then you say, well, do you bring enough to the table to overcome that? We're going from the general and the broad to the specific and the individual. And I would say that the problem is something like systemic racism, but really it's like systemic feminism.
Sure,
So we have
that's fair. That's 100% fair. Me asking
problem.
you in particular whether you do or don't isn't relevant to the broader conversation. That you're right about that. I shouldn't have said that. The broader question I should have asked is, it feels like is what I said secondly, that it feels like there's not this huge stock of like good tradcon conservative men that just can't find wives. It feels like those men have disappeared too. So if they're gone, then it seems like, of course, those women are there.
So the men are infected with the feminism as well. It's infected both sides. It's not just the female side that's deficient. It's both sides have been overwhelmed and demoralized.
I get, depending on what your goal is, I guess. From your perspective, yeah, I mean, that's what it would look like, right? Men are becoming more feminine, women are becoming more masculine, and everything's kind of falling apart, right?
Yep. And it's not going to work.
Sure.
So it's like a massive problem to me.
Yeah, I understand.
Some people don't see it that way. Yeah. So, so if I was going to have the conversation about women in the workplace, I'd be coming from that perspective.
You guys can continue that if you'd want. I just didn't want to loop back over the same points over and over.
Okay. Well, if I was going to make comments on that, I would say the problem with women in the workplace are probably more than one or twofold. But the obvious ones are that, we could look at replacement birth rates and talk about how many children really does a family need and should be having. We could talk about how much attention from the mother does it take to raise a certain amount of children. We could talk about dissatisfaction in the home and dysfunction in the home when both parents aren't present in the home to a certain degree. We could talk about the cost of a home now versus the wage that a single income used to be able to earn in times past. But to me, the number one is, and Stardust, you and I have debated on this before, this idea where, to me, the right relation between a man and a woman is that the woman belongs to the man. So when a woman goes off to work and earn her own wage, if she's doing that in any other capacity other than as the representative of the man who she belongs to, we're already like out of bounds. We're basically doing something that should be illegal. The woman is under the responsibility and essentially the ownership of the man, whether it's her father or her husband. And so she can enter into society as his representative, and her money belongs to him, and her action is actually, he's responsible for it. So the way I would see it, if we had a society, if we had a civilization where having women work was required, and I don't believe that we do, by the way. I don't think we actually need it in order for things to go swimmingly. Then in that case, it would only be like basically by the permission and the allowance of the man, whether it's the father or the husband, and in special circumstance. And in those, I would think that primarily what type of work we would be doing is in the care and feeding of elderly, like nursing, the infirmed, things like that, the things that are more suited for the woman who has a mind that's designed specifically for relating to children. So people who are in an infantile or like enfeebled state, like a child is, then she's really well suited for looking after them. Young children, young school teachers, nurses, things of that nature. And I know that sounds just misogynistic, and it is. But the thing is, I think that women will be happier in a life like that, and the men will be happy. And most importantly, that's the way we can have happy homes for the children, which is my number one concern. So any degree, to any degree that we're sacrificing the happiness and the wholesomeness of our homes for our children, it's to that degree that I'm against your proposal. So the number one concern is the caring for the conditions of the children, because the children make the society. The children grow up to be the people, and the protecting of innocence. Like, that's my number one value with regard to dealing with humans.
So I'm kind of curious. You said a lot of the stuff that was reliant on the idea that like women are. Sorry, you even specifically said that like women were like programmed a particular way. I believe that like they're wired a particular way. Things along the okay. So I'm curious if we had. So we have ways of seeing that somebody is a woman, that they're gonna have like that particular characteristic, so that we can make this like conclusion, right? That I'm gonna it's kind of steelman you a little bit. This conclusion that she will be happier in like a home. We can basically decide a bunch about her life for her, right? So I'm curious if we had a machine
under the leadership of a man.
Okay, sure. Under the leadership of a man. Okay, yeah, absolutely, sure. So I'm curious if we came up with like a machine that could maybe under the auspices of like looking for like genetic flaws, diseases, things like that. If we found a machine that told us a bunch about people's characteristics or their talents, capabilities, whatever, not necessarily like super deterministically, but enough that we could like infer and like decide about them. And you were chosen to work, like let's say it's a utopian society, right? So like sex work is legal, and this scan decided that you were supposed to be a male escort, but like you're only going to be able to service men. Would you submit to that? No. So you wouldn't be a gay hooker if like the same brain scan that would say like women are predisposed to like this or that. You wouldn't submit to a scan that said like it's the same reason, same logical reason that like that is the best suited career path for you in your life.
Well, the reason why it's not the same logical reason, and the reason why I'm saying no, is because that's not actually logical.
How's that not logical?
Because the reason why women are the way they are and men are the way they are is that it's a reflection of nature, which was designed by God to be the way that it is. And there is no place for a male hooker in the right way for things to be.
A gay male
so
hooker.
No, I wouldn't do that. That's absurd.
Okay, so
first of all, to get out of the way, do your arguments depend on divine, on God? Because I just want to know, since if we're going to argue with you, do we have to accept that in order to debate your points?
I imagine it's going to be a big part of it.
I think I can debate them without it if you need. And the reason why is because the laws of nature, as we observe them in science, are reflections of God's laws. So I can just go natural with you if you prefer.
Okay, so I'll come at, there's a lot of ways to come at this, but coming at it from an economic perspective, if all women left the workforce right now, that would be a pretty huge disaster for productivity. That would set civilization back a couple generations at least, just in terms of productive. Like we'd all be much poorer immediately, and it would cause a lot of disruption, right? It's just basic numbers can tell you that. There's not enough work to do at home in a modern home to fully employ all of half of the population, all of the women. So if none of them could have jobs, they wouldn't have a lot to do, and we'd be a lot less productive, and we'd live much poorer lives. So there's that problem right there.
They would be raising children.
But raising children is not a full-time job these days.
It can be.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. They would be doing what they're supposed to do instead of farming it off to the television, farming it off to the teachers at elementary school, farming it off to daycare.
Oh, are the kids in school all day?
No.
So what are they doing?
Kids don't need to be in school all day.
Okay. Well, how much would they be in school?
Probably a couple hours, a few times a week.
All right. So, and when they're not doing that, they'd be at home?
Yeah.
Hanging out with
reading,
mom.
Practicing, working, and hanging out with mom and raising the other kids.
okay, that still seems, again, it's coming at it economically, it still seems pretty inefficient. You know, if we can have, like, you know, you can, I'm with you criticizing schools, but it seems like having having kids at home all day and having moms have to take care of them all day seems like a pretty inefficient use of human resources.
Yeah, that's because that's because you value human character development lower than I do. You value plastic goods above healthy families.
I mean, you know, I'll give, like, perhaps there's some sort of benefit from spending like most of your day at home with your mom that we're missing out on in modern society. Perhaps that's true, but we've traded that off for mom being able to go and earn an income and for us to lead a much higher standard of living as a result of that. So if you're right, I mean, the cost of that at least is going to be like we're going to be a lot poorer in order to, you know, we're going to have to pay the cost of spending all day at home with mom.
So the issue is that
kids.
I think this is always going to ground out in some more like Christian or something worldview, because in a way you're kind of begging the question when you say like we're going to end up poorer or we're going to end up worse off. I mean, that's really the question though, because my guess is that big tech, wait, I don't know what your name is. What do you go by?
You can call me Mike if you want.
Yeah, so what Mike is saying is that, like, you know, he doesn't care if we're a little bit poorer or have worse cell phones or not as many internet connections if like the spiritual strength of the family is stronger, right? So what you see as being poorer off, he would criticize you for saying, okay, well, you're selling out the ability for families to be functional and healthy just so that you can have like more goods, basically. It's the same, right? So there's some trade there. That what do you value more?
And I was giving time for you to come around to it, but the other logical conclusion would be that in order for something like this to be possible and to be practical, it would have to coincide with a massive restructuring of our economy anyway, and a massive restructuring of essentially our concept for our purpose for living. So there are other social implications that go along with the fact of removing women. It's not like the idea would be to just keep everything as it is, just take the women away from the workforce. It would be to return the women to their homes, return the women to their fathers and to their families, and then reorganize the workforce with a completely different goal in mind than the one that we currently have, which is basically the satisfaction of personal gratification desires. We would shift to a absolutely different goal, which is something vis-a-vis like nationalistic and Christian, something where we see ourselves as an extension of a family. We are one nation, and we are working for ourselves and for each other, and essentially working in on a world that is in a race to subdue the globe. So right now, what we're trying to do is globalize the world economy so that everybody can have the most personal gratification as they can. And it's like everybody will just go to work in their jobs so that they can be gratified. But really, we're not organizing ourselves in order to have happy, wholesome homes. We're not doing that at all. So a total top-down shift of vision is required in order to make it possible for things to return to how they ought to be, meaning the women belonging to their husbands and to their fathers, and the children being modeled by their mother in how it is to be obedient to father. So in order for us to have the nice things, like I said in the beginning, even with the healthcare debate, in order to have the nice things we want, like have happy, wholesome homes that aren't totally broken and dysfunctional, we have to become the people who can have that.
I don't
just gonna.
There's something fundamentally wrong with what you were saying, right? Because when we're talking about the welfare state, this is an idea that the state steps in when the person needs help from the broader community, right? The national community, the whatever level of community that the aid is coming from, right? So when you're saying that like we can only accept this aid when we're at like our very best or like the pinnacle, like I don't think that that's really fair, because I think there are lots of cases where people have like addiction, mental health problems, like
it's not a matter of like only the lowest people needing it. There's like a common phrase in the church of, or at least I heard this growing up a lot, is that God helps those that helps themselves. Like I don't think most community driven people would say that like, you know, John, who just got fired from his job at his factory or is like out of work or whatever, doesn't deserve any help or compassion whatsoever. It's more just like if you're not willing to take the steps to better yourself or be involved in your community, like why should other people pick up the slack for you? Is like the argument.
Yes, exactly. So charity is a big thing, but also hand in hand with charity goes responsibility.
Yeah, so that's absolutely fine. Like there's all kinds of ideas throughout our history of like noble obligation, right? And I'm okay with that. Like I actually really prefer like a paternalistic state and like ideas of noble obligation rather than something like a balance, between the paternalistic state and their like a noble obligation, right? So I think that that's the key thing, right? Is that you still can provide baseline things like healthcare, like if you're somebody's struggling with housing, like transitional housing, like all these things, and it doesn't. Even if it's not somebody, like I do agree that people do need to like pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Literally, like you do need to some extent put your own effort into these situations, or like your life direction, life path, like whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, like you can't say that we can only deserve these things when we're our idealized selves, because it feels like. I think it's built out of the idea that like we're only using like hedonistic ideas or like desire satisfaction theories of like gauging how well somebody's life, like the well-being of somebody's life, or like how good their life actually is. Like I think broadly speaking, we have a pretty vague, amorphous, like utilitarian / like hedonist kind of appreciation of like evaluating like, is my life good? And I don't think that we have to necessarily, we can identify this, we can talk about this, but we don't have to say like, well, this is like a root cause. This is a horrible boogeyman. So we need to go over to like the religious side, like divine command theory or like what the fuck ever, right? To try to say like, well, this is how we know something's actually good.
Well, I think that was the question that he tried asking earlier, though. I don't know if it was to you or to somebody else. It's like, okay, well, if it's not with respect to Christian values for whether or not society is good or bad, then what is it with respect to? How are you measuring it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question. I think value theories as a whole, like I don't know that there is a singular one that tells you everything you need to know about the existence of life, right? Like how to like value something.
Well, sure,
like,
but so he's given an answer, right? He has his valuation. But if we want to challenge that, then we have to have, well, how do we value it? You can't just say it's a good question, that it is the question, right? That's the one being asked, right?
Yeah, no, so I'm just saying, like, if we're talking about like how we do it, we kind of, the ideal system that I'd want going forward is using the current one, but continuing to like evolve it and advance it and talk about it and like add to it, right? A lot of the stuff like from like feminist philosophers on like different like ethics and like like value theories that have come out over the last like 20, 30 years weren't really around 500 years ago or like in the conversation. So I don't think that we want to limit ourselves to something static, like this is what God wrote, so this is all we have to do, right? Like,
sure. So the broader question is like whether or not we as liberals believe in the concept of moral progress. That's the question, because with respect to, say, Christian values, there hasn't been progress in the country. If anything, it seems there's like a spiritual rot or some sort of regression. So with respect to Mike's value system, he can point to, these are the things that I value, things like strong family structures, things like this is the role of the man and the wife, this is the value system I have, and things are regressing from that point of view. And then, so then the flip side is like, as the liberal perspective, like, well, what do you think we're progressing in? Do you think society is, I think Mike asked the question initially, is everything going well right now? Like, what, like, are things going well, or are they not going well? And if they're not, why not? To just say we need to refine what we have now and then to kind of leave it at that, when we haven't even given like, what are we even refining? What are we aimed towards? What is moral progress?
Well, I think we kind of hinted at it, right? Like I think we have this like amalgamation of shit from like hedonism, utilitarianism, like even some Christian stuff. Like it kind of comes from like all different really directions. Like it's
but what is that? Right, that's the problem. Like, let's say that you have some people in society that aren't bought in to we don't have that social contract, that cultural concept, right? In a small community of religious people, there's going to be a buy-in, right? Nobody's getting free shit. You know, if you're helping the dude down the street, it's because he's related to somebody you know, he goes to the same church as you. There's like a community involvement and a community buy-in where everybody's expected to try to pull their own weight as much as possible. But in a more like federalized, liberalized, nationalistic sense, right? If you have people that are literally just freeloading, or they aren't bought into the same value system, or they are just hedonistic, then we reintroduce all of those old philosophical economic problems, free rider problems, tragedy to the commons problems. Well, what if you have people that are just leeching off the system and they don't share your values and they're not doing anything? Like, what is our overall buy-in? It seems like we need more direction than just an amalgamation of ideas, right? If we're arguing with Mike and trying to debate him out of his system, and he says, I believe in like the Christian family values, values. I believe that the family is the foundational structure of all of society, and this is how the family should be structured. Well, what do you want? And then you say, well, I believe in an amalgamation of things, including hedonism. I just don't think it's a very compelling like counterexample, right?
Yeah, sure. I think the problem that I would take with that is that you are looking at something that says like a couple of disagreements with what he's saying. Like, firstly, like I don't really agree that society is failing. Like, I think that everything is really kind of going well. And I think
but then there's that we have to get the. I've got to ask again. Like, how? Well, how? With respect to what? That's the question. How is society going well with respect to what?
Yeah, and I think this would. Sorry.
No, finish what you're saying.
Okay, I'll make it really quick. In that case, I would just think that this is like we're on two different pages in some respect, because I think what you come up with as... Holy shit, I lost my train of thought again.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Let me give me my thought back.
So I come at value like an economist, right? Value is what people want, and you figure out what people want by how they behave. So are people... So you'd measure like...
Wait, real quick, hold on. Before you go down this road, because you can if you want. I don't think you really believe that though, right? So like I'll hit you with the most extremist example. Let's say that I'm going to do full Vosh utilitarianism, and then we do economic thing. Let's say I can show you that there's more prosperity and more hedonistic pleasure throughout all of society if we bring back slavery. It's only 10% of people that are black. We enslave them. We boost the whole economy. Every white person, Asian person, Hispanic person is way better off for it. There's probably going to be another value there that you're going to appeal to say, okay, maybe it's not economic values. I think the economic analysis is a tool, but that's working with respect to a different philosophical underpinning, I think. So it's got to be something different besides economics. Unless you are going to say like, yeah, I think if slavery made more people happy off, it's worth the trade-off, which I don't think you would, right?
Well, I didn't say anything about social value yet, but that's for individual value. I think that's a perfectly good way to look at it. Now you're saying, is society better if we increase everyone gets more of what they want, except for one person who suffers like an infinite amount or something, or a small group of people, in an immoral way? That seems wrong. First of all, it's not clear that we actually... I don't think if we brought back slavery, or if,
so real quick, I'm sorry.
At the times when we had slavery, that we actually were.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
So you said another word. There's so much. Whenever I use the phrase "begging the question," what I mean when I say that is that we're kind of sneaking in the conclusion with the question that we're asking. So you just said like slavery would be bad because we're improving things in an immoral way. That's what I'm trying to get at. What is the immorality of that? What is our fundamental like moral system that we're kind of like pointing towards that can be a counterpoint to the Christian one that Mike has proposed? Why is that immoral? What is immoral about it? What is the moral system? What are we pointing towards? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't believe in one myself. The economic value is the only kind of value that...
but not even, because economics is just like an analysis of like transactions, right? Like, let's say it were the case...
Or resources.
Well, sure, but like, let's say it were the case that children would choose economically, like, to buy heroin because they get like a ton of pleasure out of that. I imagine they probably would.
The thing is, you've got to consider that if there were slaves, there'd be also a lot of people who were really upset about the slaves and wanted to do something really badly to not have slavery. Which we actually did, right? We had a war. So I would say
now you got to be careful, because now we're appealing to like the societal consensus. Like if we get to the point where 51% of society is upset about trans people, right? Do we get rid of trans people?
You can measure that economically, right? You can, like, people sort of like conscious, they're moral compelled to do something. You can measure the value of that. Like how much would you pay to?
Would you have said that
people paid a lot
in the part of human history where slavery was economically viable and you were rewarded for it? Would you have considered like slavery to have been like a moral thing in those periods of time, and it only changed because the economic preferences of people shifted over time?
Like I say, I'm not a moral realist, but I think that I don't know if you need a moral theory to say that slavery is always going to be bad. You could say probably always going to be bad just for economic reasons, because people really value not having slaves and not having to feel bad about there being slaves in society, and that's economic value just can outweigh any sort of value you'd get from the slavery. right? Like people would pay a lot to not have, for there to not be slaves. And they did.
Yeah, but
They
people
had
would
a
also
war and
allocate their money
sacrificed a lot of
in
lives.
ways that I think more conventional systems would call unethical as well, though, right? Like there might be like a huge market for child sex slaves, right? For child sex trafficking. But I don't think we would say that,
But
well,
there's a huge market for rescuing child sex slaves. Probably a bigger
yeah,
market.
but do we weigh that to see, like, is there more money for fighting child sex trafficking or going towards child sex trafficking to figure out, like, where the morality of that situation lies? Like, I'm asking you to bite really hard bullets. I understand these are difficult questions, but I'm just saying that, like, let's say it was the case that there was more money towards procuring child sex slaves versus saving them. Does that make it okay then? Like, well, there's more people going after it than trying to stop it?
You know what? It probably does. I think that you can always, if there's something that's so wrong that you know a lot of people find it wrong, then I think you can always people you can always measure that in terms of economically. Like if everyone is bothered by the existence of slaves or child sex or whatever, you can measure that want by, in term, like economically, they'll pay to end it, and they do, right? So I don't know if there's ever a need to have some extra kind of value that's not somehow separate from economic value, because there doesn't need to be. If people want something for moral reasons or whatever, well, as long as they're willing to pay for it, then it's an economic value too, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of a way to, like, it doesn't matter where people's values come from. Just the fact that they value it means that they're willing to pay some amount for it, or to sacrifice some amount of resources, or however you want to look at it, and you can measure that.
Yeah, it can be measured, but I feel like most people intuitively wouldn't have a good sense that something is moral or immoral based upon the amount of money chasing it. I think most people, maybe you wouldn't, but I feel like most people would be unsatisfied with those types of answers, because that could take you down some really scary roads really quick. Yeah, go ahead.
We're wired not to think of morality that way, but I think it actually does. Well, morality depends on what kind of morality you're talking about. But like I said, I don't believe that there's
Jewish
some sort
morality.
of, I don't believe that morality is an
Just
objective thing. I think partly it's a way that we sort of negotiate and cooperate with each other, but also partly it's just sort of this kind of morality that's just sort of feelings we have. We just get upset about certain things for some reason. And I don't think you need, we like to think of that as because of some sort of deep fundamental principle, but I don't think if you're analyzing society, you need to make it that in order to measure it and account for it. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense in that it has a level of consistency, but I feel like there would be many deeply unsatisfying answers there that at some point that at some point
we're wired to want to feel like a morality is something deeper than just some feeling that we have, but I don't think it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, like, sure. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree, right? I'd be an anti-realist as well, but I think at some point, I think you would you'd start to ad hoc rules on or something to where it's like, okay, fuck, the economic thing maybe doesn't work. Like maybe maybe you said something right now that's so dumb that now there is like a huge betting pool of people that are like raising money to get you assassinated. Like, is that, I feel like you would want to have some kind of moral conviction to condemn that behavior. We're like, okay, hold on, guys, you need to stop. And like, well, why? There's enough economic activity behind us to do it. Like, what right do you even have us to ask us to stop, right? By
I would just say has like an incentive to like morally condemn it, because then it opens up the door for other people to just kind of put out contract kills on people. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like, you don't want to allow that in a society, because then people are just going to start fucking killing each other.
Well, yeah, but maybe they would. But if there's a lot of money behind it,
even if you could somehow show that it wouldn't have that effect, I would just appeal to people and like, hey, this is really unfair what's being done to me.
Well, but who cares if it's unfair or not? That doesn't matter, right? It's about economic allocation, right?
But I think people would feel like just sympathizing with me would be enough to convince people to spend more money on stopping it than whatever money they're getting from whatever's being made by doing it.
I mean, that's the assumption ultimately, that you make, but like, if it wasn't, like, there are people in the country that won't bake cakes for gay people, or that wouldn't want to serve black customers, even though there's an economic punishment.
And there are tons of people who pushed back against that, and were willing to spend resources to make sure those gay people get the cakes, right? So, like, I've never seen a situation where everyone wants something, but it's obviously not possible to make it happen to make it happen without, where you need to have some sort of fundamental moral principle in order to make it happen. Where you couldn't just say, well, you feel bad about this thing, you want it to change, so that's how valuable it is. It's as valuable as however much you're willing to do to change it, right?
Okay. I'm done stillmanning, Mike.
Thanks.
Cool.
You did good. You did good, and you pressed him. And I
it
think
was
the
good.
problem is, like you were identifying, if we just go on the economic value of a particular choice, which it goes down to just preferences. I think actually there's a possibility for that to work out if we end up finding morality anyway, but it's only if we're able to take a full account of costs and then have a total presentation of this choice equals this cost and this benefit. So a full cost benefit analysis, like a totally full spectrum. If we're able to do that, then I think that just naturally we're going to choose the moral thing anyway, because that's the way it's set up. Like nature, in the way that I see it, is set up so that when we choose the right way, everything goes right. It's only when we don't go the right way, things become exorbitantly costly and less beneficial until we literally.
So you kind of agree with me then.
Yeah, but,
Well, hold on,
the
careful.
qualification is only if we develop essentially the technology or the language or whatever it requires to take a full spectrum analysis to really factor in every single variable, which is the problem is that we don't have that, and thus we must rely on wisdom.
And the problem too is we're using an economic analysis here to beg the question or to shortcut morality. Because what you're essentially saying is like, okay, well, we can use an economic analysis, but I want to measure the true costs. But for you, the true costs aren't going to be monetary ones. You're going to want to try to find attach a value to like, what is the cost of a child being raised without their mother? Or what is the cost of, but these are going to be costs that other people using a quote unquote economic analysis are going to disagree with, right? So the economic thing is really just a tool to express some other value, which is what we're really trying to get at, right?
Yeah.
Because in that sense, we'd all agree with economic analyses, but the really important part isn't that we're using economics. Is the important part is what are we choosing to measure, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think so. From what I can understand, it's usually that we're actually measuring like utility, and especially utility with regards to well-being or like health or like quality of life or life satisfaction, things like this.
Yeah, sure. But then again, like utility there, what does that mean? That's where the whole debate is. Like we can say words like this, well, I just want, like this is, I'm very critical of like Vosh does all the time. Like, I just want to have more good things and less bad things. Like that's what essentially we're all saying. But it's like, well, what are the good things and bad things? That's the question. And Mike has a solid answer because it's rooted in the Christian worldview, right? Good things are a family structured in the way that the Bible says. It leads to community structured in the ways that naturally stem from the construction of the family, that leads to a society that engages and interacts with each other to like fortify and strengthen all these systems. That's like the meta value of what Mike is pointing towards. But then for the liberal values, it feels like here we're just saying that like, well, we want to have like more of the good things and less of the bad things. And like, well, how? Well, we want the things that are gooder and less of the things that are badder. Well, what are those things? And then we don't have, it feels like there aren't good answers for that here.
Well, I mean, I don't know that you're ever really going to find like a good, like concise answer, because realistically, like we want our society to play out differently than his would, right? In his society,
well, but
everything is
yeah, how do you want it to play out? That's the question. Like if you have a, like, this is what my perfect society would look like.
Yeah. And so I think sorry, go ahead. This is your panel.
Okay. Thank you. Figured I really appreciate that. So I figured we're running low on time, so I figured we could skip to the last topic, and if we have time, we'll come back to the third one. Do you believe that art and music produced from different cultures? Did I write this correctly? Do you believe that art and music produced from different cultures, better with or without influences from outside cultures, is cultural appropriation and borrowing what makes... How did I write this?
Your first question was badly written too, Stardust.
Good God. What did I do?
Lol.
It's okay. It's been a day. It's one of those days.
So sorry. Okay. What? How did... give me a minute. Actually, you guys carry on.
You
for another
remember
minute and...
what you were thinking?
Okay.
because I can't actually.
I do remember what I was thinking. I'm just I'm trying to rephrase this. Okay. Do you think art and music from different cultures is equally valuable? Do you think it is possible to compare modern rap to Beethoven or Olmec sculpture to Sumerian jewelry? How would you decide what to preserve?
Oh boy.
I mean, I would say people can enjoy all types of art. I think there can be a lot of value in art from other cultures because sometimes they might do art in ways that you wouldn't have even thought to do it, which is cool. So there's like different ideas that can exist that would come from people that you would never think of. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of, I don't think that we should like be obsessively trying to preserve certain types of arts. I just think that you kind of do yourself a disservice by thinking you can only enjoy art from one particular culture or one particular society.
Subjective experience.
As a guy who's like absolutely retarded when it comes to music, I don't really I don't know any of the complexities that actually go into it, so it's completely out of my field, I guess. But as a guy who likes film, I think that like the back and forth of different genres across different cultures can be like really fucking interesting. There's the main thing of how samurai films influence westerns, which then influence samurai films, and kind of goes back and forth on that one, where you even got like Japanese directors going to American studios to like direct westerns at certain points, I think, and that can be kind of interesting. I think that I don't think it's like cultural appropriation if you're allowing different genres to influence each other across like different nationalities, because you can come up with some really fucking cool shit when that happens.
Sorry, I was missing an "is" in the previous question. Do you believe art and music produced from different cultures is better with or without influences from outside sources? Is cultural appropriation and borrowing what makes things like rap, rock, and opera more wide-reaching and relevant than their more pure counterparts in traditional music? So, yeah, sorry.
I think that all Black American music is cultural appropriation. It is like rap is all dependent on electronic synthesizers and things like that. Those were all invented by white people. It's white culture being appropriated by blacks to make music. And if they're doing anything other than banging on a bongo drum, including using lyrics with your song, that's all white cultural appropriation. With that said, I like rap music as long as it's not degenerate thug culture promoting big booty drug music. But the sounds and the rhythmic lyricism and all of that is epic. I even like the use of poetic double entendre, the creative use of lyricism. I like what blacks do with music, and rock and roll, as we know, comes from jazz, which was black too. But it was all blacks using the instruments that white people created and doing it on white man's stage and in a white man's record studio, or a Jewish man. But so it's all cultural appropriation all the way down, if you ask me. That's basically. And so in a way, like it's all good. Yeah,
can ask
still kind of lost on what the question is.
It's kind of a mix. It's a mix of do you think that like art and music are better when they have influences from like other cultures, or do you think
yes.
Okay. And
I mean,
and do you,
obviously, right?
I mean, so I think art is like an individual's expression, right? So the more that an artist can like interact with people, or like experiences that they can have, can modify the art that they produce, which can modify the like experience that the individual subject has. So yeah, I think the more that different cultures like interact with each other and like exchange information or ways of making music, looking at things, whatever, the better. Like it just the more the better. And in terms of like, I don't know shit about music really. So I don't know if I could really say, like, I think that there's probably going to have a ton of people that say, like, oh my God, you can't possibly compare, like, Mozart with Jay-Z. But you're going to have a ton of people that will, like, there's this one YouTube video that I saw. I was comparing, like, rap artists over the last, like, 30 years, you know? Like, you're going to have a ton of people that are going to, like, argue for days on who the best rapper is, right? Like, I think it really just boils down to, like, subjective experience and the byproduct of like more cultures interacting with each other, the more positive results we'll see. And okay, nobody's talking, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's being like cultural appropriation either, because I think there are lots of times when, because artists don't really go into, well, okay, maybe not in the last like 20 years, and maybe before that, I'm not sure, but like they wouldn't necessarily go into this and be like, oh yeah, like I can't wait to look like a something, and steal part of like the culture and add it to their like costume for their music video or whatever.
Sorry, my
I think
chat
it's more.
just told me something I didn't know.
What's that?
Spaced out there for a second. Did you know that rap came from disco? I didn't know that.
Rap came from disco?
Yeah, wait, what?
Yeah, Google that. The founders of hip hop, DJ Kool Herc, the godfather of hip hop's first DJ, and Coke LaRock, the father of MC, hip hop's first MC, would just play disco music, with Herc creating the breaks for Coke LaRock to say some rhymes and the b-boys and b-girls breakdancing. It wasn't called hip hop back then. Yeah, it came from disco. Didn't know
DJs
that.
spun disco back then, and
Checks out.
Sorry, what'd you say last username? You're very quiet right now.
Damn.
It's super quiet. You're still quiet if you're talking. A little bit.
people thought it was loud, so I turned it down. Now is this better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So disco, I mean DJs, disco had DJs, and rap needs DJs. So I assume that's the connection, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean, it makes sense. Makes sense. It was an evolution from something else, and an orchestra is an evolution of. I don't know, where did that evolve from? Where did composing come from? It's all evolving. But yeah, I don't see any problem with it. It's just like all things can be done the right way and the wrong way. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I don't think
there's
does anybody
wrong-
here have like an issue with cultural appropriation. I think none of us care that much about it, right?
Yeah, not really.
Well, I guess like the main thing is that some people might think that taking influences from certain genres or something could be considered cultural appropriation. But like my understanding of it is that you affect certain like, I guess, things that are in cultural practices without actually understanding what the cultural like the significance of it, and you're just using it because it like looks aesthetically cool and kind of being disrespectful to it. But like it depends on who you ask, I guess.
Yeah, and even that, who the fuck cares? There's only been one convincing thing that I've heard where like, okay, I can see like cultural appropriation being like a thing here that's kind of annoying. And that's if you're like, if society at large, or I guess even you as an individual, is like super shitting on a certain person for doing something, and then you co-opt the aesthetic, I can see that being like really annoying. But otherwise...
Earlier, Big Tech, you said that all like black music was derivative. Is that correct?
I meant like rap and hip hop. That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, so derivative of. I mean, I was being a little tongue in cheek, but really what I'm saying is the idea of having electronics for your sounds, or like we just said, coming from a DJ, that came from white culture. So we could say black music came from whites just as much as white. Elvis Presley stole rock and roll from blacks. It's kind of a give and take once it gets over here. So I don't even know what cultural appropriation is in music. Like Mako just said, it's usually what we're talking about is somebody who's trying to pass themselves off as something that they're not for some sort of benefit or to fit in a special way, right?
Well, more affecting something for just purely aesthetic reasons and maybe being a little disrespectful with it. But yeah.
Yeah, so if if I make a Chinese restaurant and I make everybody go, oh, a ching chong, oh, would you like a noodle with that? Like, I mean, is that cultural appropriation? Or if I make a Chinese taco?
No, that's just kind of racist.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's racist. It's a stereotype or whatever. But but if I make Chinese tacos where it's like a taco but it's got Mandarin chicken in it, is that cultural appropriation? I don't know. And I'm a white guy who made a Chinese taco job.
Like I know there's
Fusion
like
restaurant. Like I don't know.
a good example. Like one of my this is like a complete tangent, but there's this and this guy has like a lot of other problems. There's just like this cartoonist or this comic artist named Josh Luna, who I believe is either Vietnamese or I think he's Vietnamese, and or or maybe Taiwanese. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, he has like a lot of very interesting political comics where he gets very mad at various like aspects of I guess living in America and like dealing with like white culture and stuff like that. And one of the like the funniest things I think he had was he got really mad that there might have been a restaurant that had like taken inspiration from his country's like traditional cooking and then adds a spin into it and then like sells it as a thing. I don't know if that's considered cultural appropriation, but it's sort of like, yeah, these all sorts of things influence on each other, and in an evolutionary strong point, generally like the strong survive. So it kind of mixes together and adds maybe something that's better than the original product, or something that people enjoy anyway. I don't know. People get mad on the internet over just dumb things too. So
this area of discussing culture to me is like, it's when we talk about food and music or fashion, these are like the flourishes of culture. They're not really what culture is about to me. Like the problem, if here we are on this panel, which is typically like a political panel or something, and then we're talking about the clashes of cultures, and then people like the meme is what do they bring from their culture other than, but don't talk to me about food and music. Yeah, tacos are great or whatever. We want more, more immigration. But really what we're talking about with culture, there's deeper implications to culture. There's ways, like we were talking about before, there's ways of relating to men and women. There's ways of looking at family. There's honor. There's differences in concepts of honor. Some cultures think that if I can steal from you and get away with it, then I'm smart and you're stupid. And then other cultures think that if I steal from you and get away with it, I need to go confess to my priest because I'm literally going to hell because I made myself into a liar and a thief. And so it's honorable to get away with a theft in one culture, and it's dishonorable in another. And so the implications of culture goes much, much deeper than food and music. And so I don't know. I don't know why I wanted to add that, but the idea of, is music from other cultures being adopted by others, is it cultural appropriation, and is it better? I think really we're just talking about innovation.
Well, yeah,
so,
it was just
so it's like sharing of technology. Like
yeah.
So music in itself is like a technology. The use of frequency and harmony and mixing it up in a particular way to create an effect in a person. An instrument is literally a tool, and this is just tool usage designed in different ways, including your vocal cords and including intonation and pentameter and all the other things that go into music. So we're just talking about mixing up the ingredients in a recipe or the instructions on an assembly. It's a technology to me. That's what music is. So it's like, yeah, should we share technology from one culture to another to help everybody enhance and reflect it? Oh, what do they do when we invent the automobile, and then the Japanese do what they do with the automobile? Now we got the Toyota Supra, and we wouldn't have had that if we just kept it just for ourselves. And so yeah, it's we definitely share technology. That's more of like the category that I put it in, more than culture.
What culture were you saying it's honorable to like steal or to get away with stealing?
I'd have to like remember specifically, but it was one of the Semitic ones. I'm not saying anyone particular, but I was talking to a man one time who's explaining this to me. He's like, where I come from, and he was explaining to me the difference when he came to America and he was learning our culture. And he was like, in my culture, this is a long, long time ago, so I don't remember if he was. I couldn't tell if he was from one of the countries that end in Stan, or if he was from Azerbaijan, or if he was a Muslim. I can't remember specifically. It was just a very foreign culture from ours, best I could tell you. This is a conversation I had 10 or 15 years ago. He might have been Lebanese, actually. Now that I think about it.
I think as thrilling as cultural appropriation is for everybody here, I do kind of think that like number three kind of looked like it could have been a little bit like spicy.
Number 1 is number 3 is a very relevant thing to Stardust in her relationships with several people, I think.
Okay.
I don't have this list. What's number 3?
Number 3. Okay, give me a second here. Is it harassment to threaten people with ostracization if they consume media you don't like or agree with? Is it okay to use group shamings and isolation rather than discussion and inclusion in progressing a political point online? So you may be wondering why I am asking this question, why I created this prompt. I feel like it's very relevant to recent events. Flamenco would know about. Yes.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. So
we need to know what these events are in order to understand the question.
Might be helpful to explain like the specific situation, I guess.
I can still hear you.
Did you want to do that, Flamenco? You're probably better at explaining.
Yeah, so I guess a TLDR is that due to Stardust's friendship / relationship with me, a somewhat prominent streamer on Twitch by the name of Keffels had opted out of a debate panel that Stardust was supposed to be on, that on the grounds that she is friends with and associates me for a laundry list of things that I didn't do. I was accused of doxing her mom, and I definitely didn't do that. And I guess obsessively cyber stalking her, which I did a stream on her and uploaded, or no, I did 2 streams on a drama 2 months ago on her, and uploaded 1 video clip about it. And basically, as a means of that, through just being very mad and a temperamental child, she decided to ban anybody in her chat that merely even associated with Stardust. Merely like following her and watching her streams was enough to catch you a ban in that chat. And Stardust, I guess, is wondering, is it reasonable or fair to ostracize and or intimidate people into not watching somebody based on those criteria, or is it just essentially bullying?
I think it's always bad to try to coerce people into not communicating with each other. So not listening to media or making media or anything. It's just always just a good policy for any society to not punish people for communicating.
I think it's gonna
social ostracization is a kind of punishment.
I'd say it would depend on the content. I mean, like if somebody was like watching like videos of like children being murdered constantly or something. Well, no, not necessarily that, but like some like really fucked up shit, or constantly engaging in certain types of media, it'd probably not be good. But that's probably going to come out in the way that those people behave, I imagine, too. So it's at some point you'd want to curb that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's really going to depend on what exactly we're talking about.
Yeah, I think in the cases when I think it's one of those things that you can look at the situation like a tool that we want people to use at their own like careful discretion, right? Like we don't want to say that there should be no situation like that ever, but at the same time, we want people to exercise their better judgment on when not to use it, which should be the majority of the time. But I feel like people are very quick to use it these days, in a lot of cases, and
yeah.
I guess it's like also a question of whether or not you should execute positions of authority to kind of execute personal grudges. I feel kind of cringe as suggesting it's like similar, but I mean with some streamer communities, they like absolutely idolize these people, and for fear of like not wanting to ostracize these people, they might go along with things that they might not necessarily agree with. I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, some examples would be like, if we're talking about like online communities where somebody is like a pretty like dangerous schizo poster, maybe for like, so like for situations of like safety or like security are the kind of situations.
Schizo poster.
You're a harmless schizo poster.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a harmless schizo poster. You're the good kind of schizo poster. Like, we all need a little bit of schizo posting, right?
Well, what's the danger of schizo poster? Schizo poster
like
is
somebody
like a long, ranty
So
poster.
okay, yeah. So the good kind would be somebody that basically is like shit posting. They're like memeing, right? They're like leaning into the idea of like schizo posting itself,
Bringing up their
Whereas,
dad
like,
stick a lot.
Yeah, the perfect example. Whereas like the dangerous kind would be somebody that where there's actual, a significant enough risk of like a real world, I don't know.
I hate these people so much that I
Okay.
want to do something about it IRL, not in Minecraft or something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Chill.
Yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, like I would say that's like the less harmless kind of schizo posting.
Yeah.
So you're talking
like,
about threats, basically.
yeah, so-
not even threats, but like just saying like it's do or
incitement.
die time. We are on the precipice of something extremely bad, and we need to like get rid of these people as soon as possible.
It's similar to what. I mean, I guess we could look at this like from a variety of different angles, right? Because what you're saying, Flam, is kind of similar to a couple of people in media recently who've said some like super problematic things.
Well, I was making an allusion to a very specific YouTuber, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
It was Mr. Girl, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't Mr.
No.
Girl. I don't think anyway. Apparently he's got some stuff that I'm completely out of the loop on, so I don't know.
You might want to get in that loop. It's kind of interesting.
so. I guess one way you could think about bad schizo posters would be like women that get targeted online, right? Another good example of like good kind of schizo posters would be like there's a Twitter user, OmniLiberal. Seems like there's lots of like good quality schizo posting out of that account.
Based. True.
For like that kind of, incitement, like the inflammatory talk, I think it's hard to come up with a generic principle for what you can say that's sort of independent of whether it's true or not, right? It seems like if that were actually true, it has to be okay to say it. Whereas if it's not true, then it's not okay to say it.
You can say true things though, and then still like, kind of incentivize people to do something about it though, too. Like it's more about like also the conclusions
Well, I'm
that
talking
you're
about
presenting.
like the claim of what people have to do. If that's true, then it seems like it's okay to tell them to. Like there actually was literally, if like aliens were about to invade us and murder us all literally, it seems like it would be okay to tell everyone, okay, go get your guns and shoot the aliens or something, right?
Right. But if it's more like broad, open to interpretation that you're like inherently distrustful of these aliens and you're saying, we need to shoot this alien ambassador in the fucking head or else we're going to be slaves to the Galactic Federation, and then you like start off like a war and that sort of thing. Like it might be true to them, but not necessarily true overall, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, so if that's true, if that's not true, then it seems bad, and if it's true, then it seems okay. So like I don't know, like what you're trying to do is come up with some principles to say what kind of things are okay to say or not, without having to resolve whether they're true or not, because that's obviously very difficult to do. And we want to be able to set some ground rules to discuss things, so that we can start to discuss about what's true or not. And it seems like, and that's tricky. You can't always do that.
Right.
You can't always come up with ground rules without first figuring out who's right.
Well, especially since you can't necessarily even know that there's like a consensus on what is the truth with some people. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the point. Like to get to the truth, we have to be able to talk to each other. To talk to each other, we have to set ground rules about what you can say or not. But then there's certain things where it's like, in order to figure out whether it's okay to say it or not, you have to decide what's true.
Right, but that again, some people might not even agree if something is true or not, and then you get into an impasse on that sort of thing. Like these can be like super subjective depending on the person that you're talking to, or at least it can be subjective to them.
But it can be hard to figure out.
Right.
Well, when we're talking about, I don't think that you have any perfect strategy, right? So I think the thing is that we do our best effort to decrease those outcomes and go along with that. Like, I don't think that you'll have a foolproof strategy that'll be perfect and not have any negative outcome at all, right?
But then it's also a question of like, what is the best outcome? Again, like Destiny was saying with Vosh, like, I want more good things to happen. It's like, well, everyone wants more good things to happen, and we reach the impasse of what are good things and what are the means in which we're like willing to assure that these good things happen.
Using that dude as an example. If we use him as an example, he's a case where he said like talking about like killing people or whatever. Obviously, like I think we can collectively understand that this is a bad thing to say. Whereas like I want more good things, I want less bad things, or like even derivatives of that. Those aren't necessarily like bad statements. Like those are, you can be saying those are flawed statements. Those are wrong statements.
The problems get to like what we define as good and what we're willing to do to accomplish those things.
Yeah, I think it's good to clarify like what good means first and foremost, and like the ideal direction you want to go.
For me, I would propose the solution to the true-false dilemma and limiting speech based on those lines. That if we limit people to speech that they can testify to and warranty, meaning the problem solves itself. So instead of saying this person is this, you can say in my opinion, or to me, or for these reasons I think that this person is this. It's a basic example, but the second part would be a warranty, meaning if I were to find out from you that if I were to go about investigating what you've claimed and find that you knew that what you were saying was false, then I could actually inflict a penalty on you for saying what was false. So there's a due diligence implied in public speech. And if people are meeting that due diligence, meaning that they've looked into it sufficiently that they're willing to speak on the matter, then they're willing to say regarding the matter only what they can actually truthfully testify to. And then also they're willing to put basically their word on the line, meaning that there's a penalty coming back if you're caught lying. Then we can say whatever you want to say, because there's an implied cost to being caught red-handed as a liar, or speaking flippantly in a way that's the idea. What we want to do, in my opinion, is that it's about curtailing and limiting and regulating the intentional liars, or the people who are intentionally getting away with deceitful and costly speech.
So I would
wrong and
if we can move away from this, I don't think it really matters like if it's like if we determine what this person is saying is true. Is a large creator condemning somebody equivalent to an attack on that person? What do you think about that?
It can be and can't be. Sorry, you were going to say something?
The large creator condemning a person equivalent to an attack?
It's some kind of attack. I mean, what do you mean by attack?
Is a larger creator saying, I think this is evil, a de facto instruction to their audience?
No, I think that you can have like assessments of something to an extent. It's just what you like, how you follow through on that. That's the important thing.
Mm-hmm. So then massive banning.
Well, like using like coercion and intimidation to stop people from engaging with that person, or stigmatizing people that still engage in their content or something like that, especially if they're like not, shitting on the person in general. Yeah, I think that's pretty shit.
I don't think the issue is the tactics. I think the issue is just the application of them. Like, I think some level of social bullying is probably important, right? Like, we should probably bully people that believe or do fucking crazy things. We've kind of lost that. I think we're a little bit obsessed with validating every single possible behavior. It's just going to depend on like what it's on what we're talking about, right? Like, if you've got a guy that just his hobby is like he thinks it's really funny to kind of throw like pretty big rocks off of overpasses at cars that are driving by. I think it's okay for everybody to be like, that guy's like a fucking dick. Like, don't hang out with him. He's a fucking loser. I think it's okay for that. I don't think the issue that we're having right now is like, is this an acceptable strategy? I think the issue we're having is a particular application of it, which is like, if somebody has a difference of certain types of political views, should that person necessarily be ostracized in every way, size, shape, or form from your life? I think that's more the issue. And even I say certain political views, it even has to be more specific than that, because there are probably some political views that are worthwhile ostracizing people for. I'd imagine everyone on this panel is going to have some line where like, okay, if somebody believed in that, that's a little bit fucked up. I don't know if I could like chill with that person, right? Which, yeah. So I think this is less of an analysis of it. It's kind of like asking like, do you think it's ever okay to shoot somebody? And then somebody's like, well, what about if it's in self-defense? What about it's right? It's not really the thing isn't about shooting somebody. It's not the strategy. It's the application of it. Like, what is the particular that we're talking about, I think.
Right, and so if I understand you correctly, something like applying it through like the brigading, like going on Twitter and posting it and rallying people and like rallying that kind of support towards that person, like that.
Yeah, I think it can be fine. Let's say you're a woman. Let's say you get raped by a guy. He roofies you, drugs you, whatever. File a rape kit. Cops can't do anything, because nobody's testifying. It's just you and one other person. And maybe you talk to some people. Like blowing this guy up on Twitter might be an okay thing, right? Like you don't want this guy hooks up with other people at events. You don't want some other woman getting raped, and you're like, okay, fuck it. Like hey, this is like this guy. This happened. This is my experience. Sharing something like that. I think it's probably an okay thing to do. I think that's fine.
I mean, the essence of tolerance is about basically that, like compromising. Like, can you compromise in order to live peacefully with other people in the society, even if you have like ideological differences with them? So, yeah, it's a good thing. We need some amount of tolerance in order to live together. If we had just said like, well, if you disagree with anything on this issue, and the issue is something that's like really important and affects people's lives and could result in people getting killed, then that means you are effectively killing these people because you disagree with me. That kind of attitude doesn't work. You have to sort of separate what people's opinions about things from the actual effects of those things. So even if someone believes something, then you believe that belief leads to horrible things happening. You can't hold that. You can't think of that person as being responsible for those horrible things, because that would be ridiculous. We'd have to just be complete enemies with everyone else in society.
Yeah,
nearly everyone else.
Although again, that's going to depend on like if somebody's legitimately like a card-carrying Nazi, that's going to be different than somebody else who's like, I don't want to abolish the filibuster, and it's like, oh well, that means you're upholding the Republican establishment, which means you're upholding fascism, which means you're a Nazi, right? Like there's going to be levels removed depending on what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'd say like the levels are probably going to be like super apparent on the surface, or at least to an extent. Hopefully, anyway.
Maybe.
As opposed to just like, oh, this person has a 3 steps removed connection to this person I don't like on the internet, and therefore they are endorsing everything that person does ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is another thing like you can compromise on that. Someone's indirectly connected to someone else. If you have a problem with it, shouldn't necessarily have a problem with the person, the person in the middle.
And mind you, this is all also like taking for granted that this person is like arguing 100% in good faith. Like I find it a little bit harder to take a person seriously that is terrified to go on a panel with Stardust because of her association with me, but then unblocks me on Twitter and tells me to kill myself. Like it's a little harder to take that person seriously, or to treat their fears of me as seriously. You know what I mean?
I think Stardust should get bullied for associating with you because you suck.
Damn.
Well, I mean,
Why do you think he sucks?
Ethan Ralph is your best friend, dude. I don't know what to tell you on that one.
Yeah, you're a mean jerk.
Damn.
I am mean. I am an asshole. Yeah. Wait, I am curious.
Do you really
Big
have
Tech,
a place to speak though? Because you're kind of a mean jerk too.
I am curious though. Big Tech
not like flamenco. I'm a sweetheart.
I'm curious.
Really?
Was Ralph
Okay.
being nice or mean when he showed my family's face docs on his stream to his viewers? Was he being nice or mean? I'm curious.
He's probably being mean back to you because you were a jerk.
Yeah, what did I do equivalent to that?
Okay, but Big Tech,
something nasty, I'm sure.
Okay.
You said you were alluding to stuff with.
I'm a
with
mean
BPF.
person. Yeah.
You were alluding to stuff with BPF, saying you knew where he lived and all of that, right? That's a little
he's a
bit
mean jerk,
unhinged. I don't know that justifies being unhinged to people. What?
Well, hey, that was for fun. That was WWE.
It was not fun.
As long as
not
it's for fun.
the receiver.
As long as we can rationalize it.
It was for fun. And also, he is a slimy, mean jerk too, and nobody should associate with him, just like Flamenco.
So if somebody's a slimy, mean jerk, we can justify then saying that, implying that we have their docs, and implying that, oh well, I'm not going to do anything with it, but I have it. So is that the bar where we have now, where if somebody's a slimy, mean jerk, we can just do these things to them?
Yes, and worse in the world I want to live in.
Damn.
In worse, what is worse?
In the world I want to live in, I would go meet that guy in person.
Yeah.
And I would be real mean to that mean, slimy jerk. In real life. But I don't do that in this world, because we're not allowed
So wait, then you approve of what Cog did, right? Because like Ralph was being very mean to him, and Cog went and met him IRL and was very mean to Ralph, right?
Well, the only problem is that Cog did it in a cowardly way. Yeah. That's the only problem.
So if Cog did Cog did it one-on-one,
you would do the same thing? Didn't you imply you would do the same thing? How is that? How is what he did cowardly, and what you're implying that you would do, like, not the same thing?
Wait, what did I imply that I would do?
I don't know. You said that you would go meet a guy and like be mean to him. What does that mean?
Yeah, we've literally talked about meeting for an event where we fight with gloves on. So that's a gentlemanly way to settle the difference.
I'm just disappointed we're not going to get Ralph fighting Worski now. That's sad.
Wait, why is he not fighting Worski now?
Because I think somehow Worski was responsible for him getting beaten in Portugal again. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell with Ralph.
Well, but the whole reason that Ralph was in Portugal was to
No. Why was? Do you know why Ralph is like backing out of the Worski fight now because of Portugal? Because it happened like right after Cog.
I mean, it was already not going to happen before.
No, he didn't back out of it until after. Unless, like, did he tell you before that he just had no interest in doing it?
No, it was from day one. They already talked. I mean, you remember, right? They talked with Keemstar, and they said like,
right, but then they followed up that they'll be back into negotiations.
I never saw that, but once the things went down in Portugal, he said, you know what? Now I'm not interested in any of you people. I don't want to do anything that will benefit any of you people. I don't even want to talk to you people anymore. So fuck a fight. I don't want to do that anymore. Now it's just off the table. I don't even want to interact. If you're gonna laugh at stuff like this, if you're gonna set up stuff like this, if you're just gonna ambush me like that, now it's not even just fun and games.
So it's just merely the fact of laughing about it that's enough to like make you a persona non grata, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but not just laughing. But I mean, like, if you think, there's two types of people, man. Two types of people in every way. But one of the people, there's one side where they see that it was just cowardly and low class, and some people don't see that. Those are the slimy bag. Like, I don't like people without class and honor.
Yeah, like people making fun of when they had a girlfriend that had an abortion and laughing about their dead aborted kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You know what I'm talking about with that, right?
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Does Ralph go and like make full streams about Worski endlessly and just like make a living out of? I mean, that it's different. So I mean, you bring that up like it's the same, but it's not.
I mean, it's cyclical. I think Kino makes a stream about Ralph. Ralph gets mad. Kino then makes a stream about Ralph getting mad again, or some embarrassing thing, or generally like I guess AF stuff because PPP fucking hates Fuentes. I don't know.
Yeah, you guys have nothing without Ralph and AF.
It's not true at all.
Except for your other stuff that isn't popular or whatever. I don't know. But you.
I did an entire stream until like until you got here that was completely devoid of Ralph, and I had like 1,000 viewers. I don't know what the fuck you. I don't get this like mindset that like Ralph doing stupid things is like the only reason why people have audiences.
I don't mean to say that's the only reason you have an audience. I mean it's like the level to which you get off on it that just comes across to my sensibility as a low class sense of humor.
Okay. I mean, I disagree because I think like Ralph is getting every single bit as good as he gets, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. We can agree to disagree, but like I said, two different types of people. Some people are like you, and some people are
like Ralph. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Ralph's cool. Funny.
I can live with that.
Talented.
I can live with that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Wow, guys. Glad we could.
Yeah, I know. We got into like the esoterica. I'm sorry I dragged everyone into that.
Esoteric Ralphism, but yeah. Press me on it. We'll answer it. But if Flamenco has to take he has to do it. He can't not do it.
You're the one that brought it up, dude.
You can't not do it.
You're the one that brought it up.
Enter into the
You're the one that brought it up, dude.
And this. Yeah, I know.
You started this.
I know that.
This tangent, dude.
That.
What are you talking about?
Just listening to you guys the last 5 minutes, you kind of remind me of two women just kind of bickering.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No, why did you have to make?
I do feel like I'm talking to.
Why did you have to bring that into it, Bryce? What's going on here?
It is like
it can be very henpecky. I definitely agree on that
one. The more emotional sex during this panel.
Comfy Dan.
Beardson, I think, on that one. No offense to Beardson, but I think he raised up the highest octave level on the entire thing.
So true.
Okay,
really
so
true.
Are we coming to a close? Or?
I think we are. I think
we're getting to a close. Yeah. So, thank you, guys, for joining. Very much appreciate it. Sorry for the chaos earlier, but also I'm not sorry. So, if you guys want to give your outros or whatever, we'll start with Big Tech.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. If you want to.
Big Tech, you can find me on cozy.tv/Big Tech. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad Beardson left so I could eat some crumbs from his table because Obama, like a baby.
Hey, Bryce Live.
All right, thanks.
All right, I'm just Bryce Live, BRYS, LIVE. I'm on Twitch. Might start doing YouTube shit. Talk about all kinds of random stuff. Yesterday I read some paper on happiness and gonna read one on death. So yeah, check me out if you like really boring and random shit.
Destiny.
Cool. My name's Steven. You can find me at youtube.com/Destiny, and I stream stuff. Cool.
Thanks, Flamenco.
You can just find me on youtube.com/FlamencoTV, and I play games that my chat finds incredibly boring, and then talk about internet drama from anywhere from e-celebrities to VTubers. So.
Last username
on Twitch and Econarchy on YouTube. Some links in the chat there. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. Again, Stardust on Twitch and Stardust streams on YouTube. Thanks again.
Yeah, anytime.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye-bye. See you later.
Nice meeting you guys. Peace.
So, Destiny, are you enjoying V Rising yet?
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
I will say, I fucking hate... it's really dumb that the research tech thing is like...
Oh, can I do a quick outro for Beardson?
Yeah.
Why?
Okay. I'm Beardson,
why he
and
left?
I'm a huge soy cuck
There
that
we
left
go.
the panel following Kai and then spent an hour coping about it to my chat. Okay, that's the outro for
Lol.
Beardson.
Nice.
There you go.
So
what were you upset about, Flamenco?
Oh no, the fucking paper press thing that like you get your paper and your scroll things from is like locked behind a random technology upgrade and the second tier thing. It's just really fucking dumb.
Oh damn.
I don't know why it's like that. It's such a dumb fucking design.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah. All right, later.
Bye.
See ya.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, guys. I'm sorry for